Okay, everybody. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board meeting for February 6th, 2024. We are broadcast live on Spectrum Cable TV channel 1303. We're on the web on YouTube, the Town channel, and you can also participate remotely via Zoom. If you'd like to participate remotely, please raise your hand, and our town manager, Audra, will let us know, and we'll let you comment or question on the agenda tonight. Is there anything, the board, that anybody want to change anything on the agenda tonight? Add or change?
I just needed to have a correction on the minutes that were approved last week. So the minutes for the 109. So I don't know if we need to add that in or if we can discuss it under approval. How do you want to handle it?
We will discuss minutes when we get to minutes.
Okay.
We'll add 109. Thank you, Stephanie. That's January 9th, correct?
Right.
Okay.
The ones that were approved on the 123
All right.
You
for
want us to
109.
rescind our vote, huh?
Revisit.
First item on tonight's agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody here tonight who would like to speak on? Yes, please, Mr. Peter.
Peter Lindquist, Chestnut Street, Camden. So this is probably the third time I've brought this up, but I really think that this is a time that we can all work together on this. The town is spending, in the midst of spending $350,000 from grant money to steward and take care of the watershed. And these are scientists and environmentalists and professionals that they've done this in other parts of the state and other parts of New England. Two items that we should pay attention to, and I'm here to bring this up. We got to do this coming November ballot. You'll find in the recommendations from these scientists, two items. Clear cutting ordinance will help a town from destruction of its watershed. It will. You know it. It doesn't have to, it's not rocket science. The other item that we should embody that they recommend is an ordinance that prohibits impervious pavement near the watershed, near a river, near a stream, near a pond. These are two items that could be written up. We have an attorney right here. We're already paying for it. Two ordinances that could be put on our ballot that I would bet that we could find support for, because we're trying to get engagement to take care of the watershed. So these are two items that we should take care of starting today, and I'd like to see them on the ballot in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Public comments on non-agenda items. Moving on to approval of minutes for, first, let's start with January 9th, 2024. Stephanie, did you have something you wanted to add or change?
Yes, when we were talking about the fees in the 123 minutes, which is generated now by the AI system we use. It's pretty good. We had some discussion at the 2 hour and 3 minute, just in case anybody wants to verify, about the open and closing of the Montgomery Dam, the fee. And it says in the packet that we were going to charge a $250 fee. If somebody wanted to split, that each person would also have to pay a $250 fee. And in the minutes, it stated that that was part of the motion. The motion was actually to accept the fee at $250 flat for the opening and closing. So that just needs to be updated in those minutes. So I don't know if we have to retract it.
I don't think so. I think that everybody
understood that, but we can redo the minutes so it's
Yeah.
more clear.
Yeah, it should just, if we have to go back and verify what the select board, stated.
Yeah, when we got the gist of it, so when we publish the fee schedule, it'll say exactly what you're
Okay.
saying.
I just don't want to ever have the minutes to be brought up and said, well, right here it said,
Yeah.
if two people petition, each has to pay $250.
Right, it's just
It's
flat.
just a flat $250. So
Yes.
the minutes should really
Mhm.
state that. So that's all I had to say about that part of the minutes. And
Thanks. Thank you, Stephanie. Minutes for January 23rd.
So I sent 3 corrections. The first one is to put Stephanie's first name on the absent list. I mean, Janice has seen my correction already. The second one is to change Jeremy's first name from Didi to actually Jeremy.
I was going to say that too.
And the last one is the vote that took place after the executive session was a 3-0-0 vote, not a 4-0-0 vote, because Tom, you had already left.
That's correct.
So that really needs to be corrected before actually we can approve it.
So moved.
So I make a motion that we approve the minutes with those 3 edits.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
I'll abstain.
Motion carries 4-0. Next tonight is select board reports. Chris, could you start us off tonight?
Sure. And I know that Sophie will probably talk more too about, we did have the McGonagall River Committee on January 30th. And there is an event coming up. I believe that's tomorrow night as well. That I'll let Sophie go ahead and describe that more. But
Actually, I won't, because I
Oh,
have 2
oh.
representatives, I have 2 representatives of the River Committee who I think are going to talk about this event. But you don't have to do it now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a panel tomorrow night. Just when you address it, make sure you give all the information so people can attend the panel, because I know it's part of their presentation. Thanks, Chris.
So both of you are covered. No more. Okay. Allison?
Yes, we, the Miko Solid Waste Board met and approved the budget for the next fiscal year. We're on a schedule that's accelerated, so that'll be for the same budget that we're going to start talking about in the town. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that I think we're on year 5 or 6 of a flat assessment to the towns. So that all the other numbers just keep going up, but Miko Solid Waste has been staying steady. And that's because we've been really proactive about trying to keep up with fees and other things. But that's a number that you don't have to worry about increasing. And the other sort of waste-related thing that I'm excited to be a part of is I was asked to serve on a task force for the Maine Climate Council's materials management task force sort of division that makes recommendations for how the state can reduce their emissions. And this is all related to waste and materials management, recycling, and all of that. So if anybody, there is a website for that task force. If anybody else is as excited about this area as I am,
Sorry.
Stephanie, it's all the reuse stuff, how we can lessen our carbon footprint by choosing in either waste to energy, incineration versus landfilling, recycling, which things are going to make the biggest difference. So it is an important thing. I know a lot of Camden residents care about it. So feel free to get in touch about that. That's it for me.
Stephanie?
I have attended a lot of the meetings. Anybody needs to have a reminder, the town of Camden on our website has the calendar. If you checked once a week, you could see the meetings coming up. It's actually pretty cool. You have the link to the Zooms and the agendas, very easy to find. So I have attended a lot of meetings, but the one I'm going to talk about is the cemetery committee. They are reviewing their budget as well for the next coming up year. They're tasked with all of the cemeteries in Camden that are so beautiful. And if anybody has any input to tell them, or if you've taken walks and you've noticed that something is missing, or you're trying to find a grave, they're working on identifying and having a website that you can go into for the Mount View Cemetery. You can go in, put in a name, you can go and find directly that particular grave site. When it is all completed, you'll have a photo as well for each grave site, and it's going to be pretty neat. And the cemetery committee has devoted a lot of time and effort and money into doing that. So just wanted to give them a shout out.
Thank you, Stephanie. This past week, we had a planning board meeting, and the planning board did further work on short-term rentals and piers. That meeting can be viewed on YouTube. Again, the planning board is really moving along with both those topics with the intent of getting something on the June ballot related to both. In addition, I just wanted to talk about a happy event that we all know about, and I was lucky enough to be a part of this past weekend, and that's the Toboggan Championships. We have some of the Snowball staff here who did a wonderful job putting that together. Holly and Rochelle, thank you. There was 365 teams in the event. West Bay Rotary was a big volunteer organization there. They helped with parking in particular. So thank you to them. It was a safe event. We had multiple town departments, including Parks and Rec, Public Works, Police Department, and I'm sure others who really worked well together. We had great attention for the town of Camden with some media, including media from Boston that wanted to see and be a part and report on this really wonderful tradition that we have. And, but most importantly, just a great job to all who were involved, and thank you very much. It was a fun event, a safe event, and really one of the things that makes Camden a great place to live and visit.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you left off the part that we lost again to the town of Rockport.
I so little this
But
time.
Yeah, but a loss is a loss.
Right, that's right.
I said we're talking about happy.
No, that I forgot to mention. That was a great event. Going out there, I hadn't been out for a while, and with all the food venues out there, a lot of the same characters. But yeah, we should thank Whiskey on Ice for providing us a really awesome sled. It was 947 versus 949 for our time, so that was a pretty competitive time, I think, overall. Anyhow, but
It was terrifying.
it was because the first rider probably
Yeah, I was the weak link.
was.
So you need to put on some weight.
That's it.
That's the issue here.
Your screaming increased the sense of urgency. Okay, thank you. So Audra, town manager's report.
So given that I had such a lengthy report last time, I figured I would hold off and I will do a longer report next meeting.
Okay.
So nothing for me.
Thank you. Item 5 on tonight's agenda is public hearings. First is Heartstone Inn for a Class 1 hotel liquor license to serve malt liquor, wine, and spirits on premises. Do we have
Yes, sir.
anybody from Heartstone here? Nope. Board?
I make a motion that we approve the application for liquor license for the Heartstone Inn.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Again, Waterfront Restaurant for a renewal of a Class 1 liquor license to serve malt liquor, wine, and spirits on premises.
I make a motion that we approve the application for liquor license for the Waterfront.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you.
I'll also note that the waterfront is back up and running, so
Wow,
make sure you
that
go
is
back.
wonderful. Great news.
Wow.
Yeah.
Action item Item number 6 is an action item. It's a consideration of a rental lease purchase of a snow groomer for the snowball.
So just to give you a little sort of background on this, the groomers are, some of the most expensive machinery that we have at the Snow Bowl. We have 2 groomers currently, a 600 and a 400, and they're on a 3-year maintenance schedule. So in 2021, the 400, which is the machine that's currently in Lewiston being repaired, was serviced in Lewiston at the dealership. So that's like I said, 3-year major service. It costs roughly $35,000. And the 600 was serviced in 2019. So I'm bringing this up because I just want to point out that they are, very regularly serviced and maintained. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing now are just, wear and tear because they're getting a little bit older, and one of them is at the end of its usable life. And this is something that was discussed with the select board and the budget committee back in 2021 budget cycle about purchasing a new groomer. So there was some heads up that the 600 in particular was getting older, and we needed to consider what was going to happen next. So it's unfortunate that the timing is sort of forcing our hand now. But, if we don't have a groomer that's operable, it really sort of will bring our season to an early end. So I just wanted to start the conversation off this way so that, that was understood from the beginning. And Rochelle and Holly have done some work to get quotes from a couple of different dealers on different options for groomers, and they can talk a little bit about that and what it might look like for the remainder of the season.
Holly Anderson, Snowball. So as just to remind you, when I was here a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that the 400, we had some engine issues with it, and we're going to have to send it out. And it took us up until they wanted to take it Friday during Toboggan Nationals, and we held them off. But we had to do a lot of work to get the 400 ready to go in terms of getting it off the mountain, getting it dismantled, taking the tracks off, hiring a transport company, because you can't just call Stevie and have him hook it on the back of a tow truck and take it to Gorham. So anyways, that one's been sent out. And in the meantime, I'd mentioned that we were going to be getting a demo from a company called Prenoth, another 400. And they delivered that. They spent considerable time training our operators how to use that one. And then last weekend, they sent a technician who is actually an expert in terrain parks. We hadn't been able, because we couldn't use the 400 for a little while, we hadn't been able to build our terrain park yet. So the kids were using the very small, what we call the wave pool. And so we spent considerable time that last weekend getting the terrain park, working with the terrain park crews and getting those things built up. And the kids were thrilled to have a terrain park again. The 600 that we have that was still operating cannot actually do the work the fine work that needs to be done in the terrain park. So the Prenoth demo that we've had has been a godsend. It's enabled us to stay open and keep the mountain groomed on a regular basis. Much better than we were able to do with just one machine. So it's really imperative that we've got the 2. Over Toboggan weekend, word got back to Piston Bully, who that's the company that of the groomers that we have, the 600 and the 400, got word that we had the demo, and so they offered to bring forth a quote on a 400 as well. So that's something new that's happened in the last couple of days. And Rochelle and I were talking about that yesterday. And so as much as it pains to bring, a price like this to you and a request, we're pretty excited about what Piston Bully has brought forward to us. So I'll let, Rochelle's got the numbers in her head memorized, so I'll let her explain that to you.
Yes, so Piston Bully is also bringing us a demo on Friday that allows us another week. They did give us a quote of $399,000. They will give us for a trade-in on the $645,000, which will bring it down to what the pre-North is at. The piston bullies are generally a little bit more than pre-North. They also said that they will take the 600 and waive any rental fees or any purchase fees until our next budget time, which is in July. So they'll take that in good faith. So we will be able to use the 400, the Park Bully, this season.
Can we just back up?
Yep.
I think I'm getting confused. So right now, the 400 is down. That's the
Yes.
one we sent out.
Yes,
You're using a 400 right now.
we are using the pre-North, which they gave us last week as a demo.
And that was a 400.
It's a Bison. It's a-
Please, please. If you have questions, you'll be allowed to ask. Okay.
I have the same question, actually.
Sure.
I have the same
It's a
question. Maybe I like
So
have a
it's-
pretty
it's-
low level of knowledge about
So two
groomers.
different brands of
Yes,
groomers,
brands.
Pre-North and Piston Bully.
Pre-North is one company, Piston Bullies, the other company. The Piston Bully is basically what we've been using. Pre-North is new to the industry. They're from Canada.
And the 400 and the 600, those are numbers that reflect like
Their
power?
size.
Okay.
Their size, yeah.
Right.
And that's exclusive with Piston Bully. Pre-North goes with either Bison or Late Wolf. They don't go with numbers. It's just how they are.
So
we
the
just
one we've been using is comparable to the 400 in,
It is a park edition. So
Okay.
that you're able to do ramps, you're able to do the park, the terrain park and things like that. Whereas with a 600 or a larger machine, we are not able to do that.
got it.
Rochelle, can we just get a little background? So you've been running with a 400 and a 600.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you sent the 400 in for repairs. And that was the one we heard about last. And I was assuming that the 400 was the one we were going to be replacing. But now it sounds like you'd like to replace the 600 with another basically 400 sized machine. So you'll
Yes.
have two 400s in the future if we approve this.
Yes. And the idea behind that is I think that what we learned when we lost the 400, it really limited us in what we could do. The 600 is really good for pushing and tilling larger trails. It can do ramps and it can do the terrain park, and that really set us back as far as doing a terrain park until we were able to get the Bison from Pre-North.
Why would you want two 400s though? Don't you want a 400 and a 600, a bigger machine for the wider trails and a smaller machine for the fine things?
The 400 will actually push until the same as the 600. Typically Sugarloaf and Sunday River, the bigger mountains, use the 600 to do a lot of their pushing. The 400 actually can do the same as the 600.
So the 400 that's in the shop right now, that was purchased 2016, but that's a 2010 machine, I think, right?
2010 or 2011. That was a 2011. And
So
the
that's
six-
already going on 14 years.
Yes, and it has 7,000 hours. And the 600 is a 2008, and that is at 10,000 hours.
Right.
So the bigger machine just doesn't add that. Is it kind of like with the bigger plow trucks, maybe that it doesn't, there's oftentimes not that much value added by having the
Right.
bigger one and you just lose on versatility?
Yes.
So you're feeling like it'd just be better to have two more versatile
Right.
machines, even if one of them can't, it doesn't have the width or can't cover quite as much ground at once as,
They still have the same width.
just
and
not
they
quite as
s-
much power.
Right, and they don't, and they really push the same.
Okay.
I think it's past, people have felt that the 600 was bigger and they like to use it for upper muscle.
Uh-huh.
Whereas we like to use it in the groomers that we have, they prefer the 400 on upper muscle because it's more versatile.
Okay. So you think the one that we sent off for repairs is going to be repairable?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
What do you do for the rest of the season or for next season for that matter if we don't approve this? I mean, you'll be running with one machine or will you try and keep the 600 up and running?
We will.
Okay.
We are having some issues with the 600. We've had some incidents where we are going through coolant rather quickly. We've been on the mountain. As a matter of fact, I was the other day, I was up on the head wall of Northeaster and alarms went off and she just stopped right there. And we've had a couple instances where the other groomer, he was on upper muscle and it stalled and it slid down. Those are concerns, so we have to, every couple of hours, we are literally checking the coolant.
And has
Where's
the,
the coolant
yeah,
going?
yeah, has a mechanic looked at it?
Yeah, yep. And the more recent one, they haven't looked at it, they haven't had time.
Okay.
We've just parked it until they can, and we've been using the Bison, the Preno.
So is there an alternative for this? I mean, this is a big amount of money to approve outside of budget.
Right.
It is, for sure. We can continue on with the 600 and we can get the 400 back. We can try to get the 600 through another year. What I foresee is probably what we're going to end up is just using the 400 next year. And it's a lot of work for one machine and one groomer.
And I think it would seem that the value that we're being offered for the 600 right now, we're only going to lose that as we go forward. And, it's not going to, that machine's not going to get any better over time. And so if we have an opportunity to work with Piston Bully on this new 400 and then get the other one repaired, then that seems to be the best situation for the longer term.
So the one that we're borrowing right now is not the
It would
one.
go back.
It goes back tomorrow.
And we were looking at a $20,000 a month rental on that to get us through the season.
And so Piston Bully got word of the problems that we're having, and they were like, "We've got a deal for you," basically. And we're feeling like that is that the deal that we've been offered is like so good that is it the kind of thing where, I mean, like the trade-in and all of that, is it, we just sold the grinder, for instance, over at Midco Solid Waste, and we got $60,000 for it in a private sale. Like doesn't it normally stand that in private sales you get more than the trade-in?
We could. I'm not sure that we have the bandwidth or time to do that.
Right, it did take a bunch of energy of
It
like,
takes a bunch of energy and
Going around.
if the 600 is not being reliable right now,
mhm.
I mean, and it takes a little while to get that other 400 back. I mean, we're really risking not being able to open and losing ski days. And we don't have that many ski days left to play with this year. And it's my belief that we were going to be, putting a new groomer in our budget anyway. So the fact that Piston Bully is willing to help us get to our budget, our budget month, let's say, is really helpful, which we were not going to get with the other company.
Can you go back into what they were offering? Because you just said that they're willing to help us get to our budget month. So
In terms of
Review that again.
using the trade-in as a down payment and applying that towards the purchase price now.
So we would pay probably 3 more months of the 20,000. So that would be 60, and they would take that off the purchase price.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Hold on, we would pay. Can you
All right, just a minute.
That's what I mean. It's a lot going on now.
Yeah, Sophie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Down.
so the purchase price is $399, right? And they're giving us a 45,000 discount.
Mhm.
So that goes down to 354. Then we're renting for 60, but that 60 will be deducted from the 414, from the 354.
No,
So this is where it's confusing.
I
right.
think it's confusing too, because what's in the packet is,
Yeah, because
Not
they-
what we're
The
talking about.
pre-moth is in the
Right,
packet.
but
not
forget-
the
we
Piston.
don't have the other one.
Okay,
But-
so we should just really not be looking at our packet. I think
yeah,
that might be.
that's what Rachel started by saying, that they just got the offer last night, right?
Right.
Okay, so I was.
So let's do the math once again. Sorry. So 399.
Yes.
minus 45,
354.
so 354. And then we're paying 60,000 to rent.
We will be if we go with the pre-Noth. They offered us $20,000 a month for 3 months to rent it, to buy. And if we buy it, they'll take that 60,000 and put it to their 379, I think was their purchase.
But
price.
minus 25 for a
Right,
trade-in
for
as
the
well.
trade-in.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, so if we go with the piston bully, it's 354.
right.
And we still have to pay 60 to rent another machine in the meantime.
No.
No.
They're dropping the piston bully off Friday morning for us to demo it. So if
For the
we
rest of the season.
just for a week. If we choose to purchase it and they take the 600 as a trade-in, then we have it for the rest of the season and we will not have to make a payment or purchase it until after July.
So our net will be 354.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much is
Thank
it
you.
costing to repair the one that's in Lewiston?
We don't know yet. They actually have to go in and see what exactly is wrong with it. It could be a head gasket. It could be the motor. I asked Jim from Piston Bully if he could give us a price for it, and he said they're not going to be able to know. It could be anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000.
And they just received that machine yesterday?
This morning.
This morning?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have another question. How do we finance a purchase like that?
Yes, so that's,
Over how many
that's
years?
another thing.
That's another thing that needs to be approved, right? So
Yes,
If you go
and
for
to give you some idea, the Snowball's current budget is financing the 600, and the the finance payment on that is $18,939 a year, and this will be the final year of that payment. So this would be the
So we
only
can-
year we have a double payment on the 600 and the new machine.
it's going to be the same size payment?
No.
Actually, no, it's going to be much
No,
bigger.
because it also, and this is, I had Jody amortize the purchase of it over, we just guessed because the bank that we usually use for lease purchasing of equipment wasn't able to get, like a quote on, or a rate that they would quote us on. So we did it at 8% over a 10-year period, because I think that, any more than 10 years would be way too long to finance that piece of equipment. So we're looking at about a $53,000 a year payment on
Instead
debt
of-
service
Instead of 18.
instead of almost 19.
19. So my question, I guess, is how many months are you open? 3 months or 4?
60 days is what our budget's for.
But actual calendar months, talking about a
So
rental.
December, Christmas vacation week through March 31st.
So it's really just a 3-month season.
Mhm.
So you could rent for 60,000 a year.
Mhm.
And the purchase on this would be 53,000 a year.
Mhm.
So there's really not a significant difference. And when you get a rental, aren't they more responsible for, or what do they do they take it back in the summer, ship it to South
have-
America?
I have heard of leasing. I know that Piston Bully currently has a contract with Lake Sugarloaf and Sunday River where they lease their machines. Saddleback also leases some of their machines. I think from what I understood from them, that they do require $100,000 down, and then you pay a monthly leasing. I don't know where we're small, if that's something they'd do for us, but it's certainly something to look into, because as you point out, it's a great thought, because they're going to do the maintenance on it and they're going to be responsible for everything that goes on with it. But that is something to certainly look into.
Go ahead, please.
My other thought is, I just lost it, but hold on, it's gonna come back. If this isn't a decision that's made tonight, could we find out if it makes it through budget? Because I mean, I feel like, man, we've talked about buying a new one since like well before 2020. And it's been turned down because we have so many other capital improvements that we're trying to do. So I'm just wondering, is this a deal that they're offering us, take it now, or it's not on the table? Or can we, I mean, look at the weather right now. If we don't make it to the end of March, which I feel like that's
Mm-mm, don't think like that.
I'm trying not to, but I'm just saying realistically, if we don't make it to the end of March, we may not have that 20,000. Also, that's on the docket. So can we find out
Are you thinking you wouldn't have to pay that March rental? Is that
if
what
we
you're
sent it
thinking?
back early?
Oh. Well, I mean,
Depending on which machine you went with. If you went
Right.
with the pre-knock, if you went with the piston bully, yes, I think what they're asking is for an agreement, a purchase agreement, so that they take, the 600 in lieu of a payment until July. Are there rentals out there? We can look into that too. Like I said, Pre-North did offer 20,000 as a rent to own. Do they do a straight up rental? That would be interesting to find out too. I do know that when I spoke to Pre-North, that they did say that they had a used one,
Yeah.
that they could rent us for 12,000 a month. However, we would have to pay to have it shipped here and shipped away, and that would be about $5,000.
So
that
now
would-
I'm confused again because I thought that we were talking that it was 20,000 to rent. So it's not
to own the Pre-North.
The new one
only
that
to
we
rent
were,
to own.
Right, you're talking
not-
about a separate rental.
Okay.
If you just wanted to rent one.
and we
So-
hadn't asked them that straight
So
out.
those are
so-
two separate rental thinking
Right.
processes.
So it's
Okay.
potential that to rent one could be as low as $12,000 a month.
Right. and
Potentially, I'm not going to hold you to it.
Sure, and an additional around 5,000 because we would have to pay
Sure.
for the shipping.
17,000 is still less
So-
than 20,000 and 16.
We're coming to the end of February. You're going to get the new demo tomorrow, you said?
Friday. And we
Friday.
will have it for a week, yes.
So the 16th. So if we had to rent one, it would be 6 weeks. I'm
What-
just throwing that out there. It's just, I'm just trying to think of all options that we have right now.
One of the things that I like about, I don't love the budgeting process. I don't think anybody does. But we do have the opportunity to really vet these things. We have a budgeting committee and we have public hearings. And people can come and really take a look at all of these things and give their input. And then a town vote, obviously, for the overall budget. If it was my choice, I'd like to see us get a Band-Aid through this year and then make a comprehensive solution, whether it be buy, rent, or go to one, I suppose. Really during the budgeting process, which is designed for that.
I mean, we've been under the gun so much with
I know.
the one breaking down, trying to get the demo in, Toboggan Nationals, and then Piston Building. And we just really haven't had a chance to really come up with a lot of other alternatives and thoughts about, and we've been kind of in a little bit of a vacuum talking about it, I think.
I know.
So, I mean, I
Trying to
would,
buy time and get through the season.
yeah. So, I mean,
What would
I
that look like if we tried to buy time? What would our best plan be, or do you even know
Right.
right now?
I think
No,
our best.
I think that we could, like I said, Friday, we have Piston Bullies bringing a demo. We're going to have it for a week. We can see where we're at with the 400 at that point, where it is on repairs. And that'll give us time to work on the 600 and hopefully get us through the season.
And we can talk to both companies about what sort of rental programs they
Right.
have
Yeah.
to give us a better idea of, what's comparable and what would that look like on a long-term basis for us? And is that better than purchasing or
And,
lease
and
purchasing?
I'm thinking that instead of having Piston Building go through all the expense of bringing us a demo, if we could just quickly come up with, get them to give us rental numbers, then we can make a decision on which one, and we can send one back and bring the other one, or keep the Pre-North and not have Piston Bully bring us a demo for another week.
Mhm.
It's a lot of effort that they have to go through to move
Right.
those things that
Yeah.
I've seen.
But also with the rental agreements, the maintenance agreements,
Right.
and how fast can it come? Because if they tell us, okay, sure, you can rent, but it's going to take us a week to send a guy. Because I think owning the equipment means that we have to have the staff that's capable of fixing it. Renting it means that we need to have a maintenance contract with either someone and waiting
That's a
for
little
someone.
more dicey.
So yeah, so everything's a trade-off.
Yeah.
So if we could have like a clear idea of the cost associated with renting or owning,
Pros and cons.
pros and cons, along with maintenance and who's in charge and how much it's costing us, I think it'd be easier to have a budget discussion with the budget committee on that.
But not just the rental, but if this agreement that they've come up with on the two of them, if this would be offered through our budget, at the end of our budget. I mean, what would change from now to our budget? That would change the agreement timeframe, but is there any other?
I mean, I think the Snowball has a long-standing relationship with Piston Bullies,
Right.
so it's not gonna do them any good to, change much, I don't think.
Right, to hold us
Yeah,
to a 3 days decision.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think they would be fine. I think it kind of came on fast for them too.
Right,
And they're trying to pull something together to help us out.
right,
So having this, even if we did have the demo for a week, it gives them time, it gives us time to really see if that is a machine that we do like and that we're comfortable with. But it also, it gives them time.
right.
Because they might have some used machines out there that are coming back at the end of the other seasons that they've leased out to other mountains.
Sure.
This was kind of a short term.
We're going to take a quick pause, Alice, and then we'll get to you. Is there anybody from the public that would like to, has a question or comment? Please come on up.
I'm Nina Holland, a resident of Camden, and I have a little spiel, but it's in big type on one page, and I have copies because I'd like comments. Camden Snowball's chairlift and downhill trails prices compared to similar sized ones have served many in our community well. Management has given fourth graders free chances on the slopes. Seniors and kids under 5 have discounts. I'm able to confirm if residents are also given free access on the slopes on Wednesdays. In relation to climate change, however, the use of electricity for lifts is high. Some have told me energy for the whole snowball takes up half of the town's government budget. I have not been able to confirm this. Climate forecasts predict less and less snow. Therefore, I hope consideration of the groomer be made for rental or lease. Well, we've already heard about the lease, and now it will be interesting to see what the rental figures come out to be. The whole of Snowball's budget is over $1 million, or by my calculation, about 3% of the town's budget. I need to insert here that I struggle to balance my own checkbook. According to financial reports ending in June 2021, stone making electricity was $80,000. Snow making repair was $16,000. Snow making equipment lease was $28,000. Groomer wages were $15,000. So we're just talking about the lift. The above figures quoted were not for 2022 because the budget report has a different format, and I couldn't quite figure it out because notice my vintage. A triple scare installment for the year 2023 for 2024 was $126,000. I don't have figures for the new culvert and lift location. Yes, leaf pickers add to the income of the lift revenue. It adds about $18,000. So if we're thinking just of summer, that's another thought. What I feel is that the lift's expenses are very high and because of climate change need to be phased out. Think about all that money could be used for the Snow Bowl grounds or other town needs, for instance, housing. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to comments and corrections from anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
Pass these down.
Sure. It's a good vintage.
Does anybody else from the public have comments? Yes, please, Brian.
Brian Robinson, town resident, also a volunteer at the Snow Bowl for the last 17 years and 13 years experience volunteering at other ski areas prior to this. So I bring a little bit of understanding. Nina, thank you for your presentation. I think it's important to clarify that while the Snow Bowl budget was $1 million, I believe it's still an enterprise account, or has that changed?
Special revenue fund.
I knew there was something.
Just about the same thing, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the revenue as opposed to the budget?
So with special revenue funds or enterprise funds, your revenues have to meet your expenses.
Okay. So it didn't actually cost the town $1 million because the town took in funds from the revenue, took in revenue from ticket sales, season pass sales, rental equipment, et cetera, and donations as well.
Correct.
As well as some funding from two dedicated funds that also help support scholarships to the Snow Bowl as well. So I think that's just a point of understanding for Nina and for others as to what the expense is. Again, as a ski patroller, I'm intimately aware of the safety on the hill, and it's especially important that we have a consistent sliding surface. And this year, because of some of the equipment breakdowns, we have not had the same consistency that we've had in the past. Meaning, if you can't run the groomer over the slope enough times and overlapping, you end up with some inconsistencies. And that's where people can get hurt because you're skiing down and you're thinking everything is fine and dandy, and you run across something you're not expecting, and that can be disastrous. So I make that point for why it's, in my opinion, especially important that we have reliable, consistent grooming capability. And the fact, I would argue that having two of the units that can do everything gives us that versatility. Because it means that we always, even if something breaks down, we have at least one groomer that can do the work that needs to be done. So I think that's important. And let me just see here, just consult my notes. I am concerned about this coolant leaking onto the hill because that's where it's going. If it's leaking while it's on the mountain, it's going into the watershed. So maintaining it is pretty important. And the other piece that I haven't heard addressed that I just want to bring up to everyone is that with climate crisis and climate change and all of these things, we've got smaller windows of opportunity to groom and to make snow. So we have to hit hard when the weather is cold early in the season, and that means we make these things called whales, and then they get groomed out to create the snow sliding surface. There was a question I think Sophie had about how are we going to really make it to the end of the season?
It was not me for once.
It wasn't you?
No, it's Stephanie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie. So my mistake. So good question. In my opinion, 30 years on the hill, on hills, doing this kind of thing professionally, I don't think there's any question that we're going to have plenty of snow. That
man-made snow that's groomed, that's a couple of feet thick everywhere, that's going to hold up through virtually anything unless there is something of biblical proportions in terms of a flood or something that's going to wash that away. That's the beauty of the way that we do it, but it requires us to have the equipment to be able to move those piles around. And if we make all that snow and we can't move it, it does us this much good because we can't actually sell tickets and operate on it. And the other piece is until we have the top of the mountain open, we sell tickets at about half price. So half price. And make or break week for every ski area is Christmas week. If you don't make money that week, you don't make it, you're going to end your season in the red. So it's important for us to have the ability to make the snow early and to get the surface prepared early so that we can maximize the revenue so we don't draw down the town's revenue from that account. We don't ask the town to put extra money into it at the end of the day. So, and I love to ski and I love to see the kids. I'm going to tell you one quick story. I was out there this weekend, Toboggan Nationals. There's a gentleman and his little daughter, and Fiona, and his name was Kurt. And they came and they knocked on the door of the patrol room at about 5:30 on Sunday night, or Saturday night, sorry. And they said, "Do you know if the bus is still running?" And we said, "No, unfortunately they're not." We said, "Why do you ask?" "Oh, well, our car is in town." So I volunteered to take them back home. And when I got out of the car, or back to their car, when they got out of the car, he said to his daughter, "Remember what I told you?" And Fiona said, "Yeah. You said that somebody, you know, there was going to be somebody nice because it's the snowball. And this was going to work out okay. And look, we found someone who was really nice." I'm not saying that about me, but any of us. I think 3 other people that I know on the patrol ran other people back this weekend. But that's the kind of place, that's the spirit of what we've got. And I just want to end with that thought. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
hang
Brian.
on. I have a question
Yeah,
for you,
a
actually.
couple questions.
I
Sorry.
just have a question for you. So I think we're all conscious that we want to make sure that the snowball has all the equipment needs to be successful. We're not trying to not make the snowball unsuccessful. But are you concerned whether the quality of the groomers we would rent would not be sufficient to, or
No.
renting or buying at this point, for you don't care, in the sense that there's no difference in your mind of the quality of the equipment we would get, as long as we get it early in the season enough to prepare the season?
My concern is reliability and having it at the time that we need it to be able to do the work. And that's over the entirety of the season.
Right.
But
So
I
whether
don't-
we rent it or own it for you?
Again,
okay.
whatever would be reliable. I myself prefer to own my own car and not have to have somebody, be responsible for I'm responsible for getting it repaired. Whether I do it myself or have someone do it. I don't know how it would work if we had a rental unit and it needed to be repaired. Are they going to send someone to our mountain to repair it? I mean, we're a little mountain. It's one machine we're renting. Are we going to get their best quality unit? Or are they going to send those to Sunday River and Saddleback because they're renting 6 machines? These are questions I don't know the answers to.
Well, the one that just broke down, we just had to send it off though. So it's not like owning one right now. We just had to send that away to be
Right.
repaired. So
And-
even though
and-
we own it.
Right, and if we rent it, we may still have to send it away to be repaired, which means we don't have it. So again, in my mind, reliability is key because we've got a short season. We don't have 6 of these units and we can get by with 5. We've got 1 or we've got 2 and we need them both.
I'm just curious, in our position right now, do you think we should be jumping on what was just offered tonight? Or do you think we should be looking at the rental options and taking a little bit of time?
I would, if I were in the decision-making capability, I would want to know a little bit more about for me, it's always compared to what. I'm a scientific-minded kind of guy, and it's always compared to what. And I don't know that we have the comparison yet. And I suspect Piston Bully is probably fairly interested in selling us the new unit. And I bet, what's the other, what are you? Prenoth. I've seen it. It's shiny and bright and looks good. And Prenoth, I imagine they're pretty interested as well. So I doubt that this is a, hey, you've got until Sunday at, 3 o'clock to do this. There's another select board meeting. There's other opportunities to review it. This seems like, a time to explore cautiously and find out the answers to these questions. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody else from the public? Board, any further questions or comments for Holly and Rochelle?
I mean, just that you guys feel like you have a moment that you could do this right now, like that going and following up with the companies and that doesn't make you
I
nervous?
personally feel better that I have time now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think-
we'll jump right into it.
I think the time crunch that I'm feeling on a maintenance end of it is that I only have a week with a good groomer. After that, I don't know what I have for a
What-
groomer.
Right.
So and it takes a week for them to get a rental prepared. So I can start working on that, see if I can look into a rental on that end of it. So I
Yeah.
didn't have that yesterday until I talked to Piston Bully. I now have an additional week that I was able to get.
So are you fairly confident that you could rent either the Prenoth or the Piston Bully for the rest of the season?
I am confident right now that the pre-knot that we have, that we can rent for $20,000 a month for the
Okay.
rest of the season. The Piston Bully, I have not looked into what they have for rentals yet.
Okay, so that would be kind of like the worst case scenario that is available. And so you can take a little time to see if there's anything
And it's
better
on,
that,
and it's on the mountain now, so
Yeah.
it's not really a worst case.
Well, it
Right.
is going
Financially.
back tomorrow if we do not rent it. It will be going back tomorrow, but we will have the Piston Bully on Friday. That will give us another week because we can only demo for a week.
and then the next select board meeting, I'm just trying to think, are you going to need in order to get through, what's the scenario where you would need?
I think we can authorize them to rent one of the two pieces of equipment tonight so that they won't be without but this is a good opener for budget season, I think.
It is.
We're really a good intro for us to get educated and start to think about this, what type of investment we want to make.
Definitely,
That's
yeah.
a rental, not a rent to own.
Just a rental.
Right.
So
makes sense.
I think we're all in agreement that we're going to move forward with a rental for the rest of the season, whichever machine
We'll
is
get the best
easier and
deal
better.
and-
Yep, that you prefer and keeps
If you
you.
need a motion, I'll make
Yes,
that
please.
motion
Yes,
right now,
please.
that we authorize you to work out the best possible deal that you can, as I know you will.
For a rental for the rest of the season.
Right.
Yeah. Not just the best deal, just
Right, like
for the rental,
Not
I mean,
including purchasing.
not including purchasing.
So to rent for the rest of the season. Motion made,
I'll second that.
motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Good luck.
Item 7A on tonight's agenda is the Megunticook River Advisory Committee. We have a couple members of the committee here to give a presentation. And we're going to try and keep this to 30 minutes, including questions.
Audra, you're introducing them? No? You are.
Okay.
I can do it, but
Sure.
go
How
ahead.
about you go ahead.
So I'll introduce the members of the Megunticook River Committee. We had committed to give an update to the select board on the work of the River Committee, and Richard Thackeray and Ellen, I can't remember your last name. Reynolds, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Have kindly volunteered to do that tonight. So they're going to give an overview of what we have done with a nice little PowerPoint. And again, it's the work of the committee that was assigned to look at different questions pertaining to the river and the watershed.
And if I could
Yes,
jump
please.
in, we felt that this was a good time for Rick and Ellen to present to the select board because we're really moving into a different phase of the project. So the first phase of the committee's work was really to do a lot of, fact finding and speak to experts and speak to just other people with interest around the project to get background on some of the elements of it. And they're going to share some of that with you tonight. And then they'll talk about the next phase, which is more of, working through different alternatives at different parts of the river for what might be done with them. So over to both of you.
All right. Well, the last 15 minutes or so, I've been fascinated by the snowball discussions. I'm gonna have to switch gears, but thank you. I just want to first recognize that in addition to all of our appointed members, Sophie and Chris serve as the select board representatives on the committee. They're non-voting positions, but nevertheless, they're sort of a constant conduit between our work and hopefully your interest in that work. So we are the members of the Maguntacook River Community Advisory Committee. There are 9 of us, all of whom are either Camden residents or Camden business owners. And we were charged back as a result of the NIFWIF grant, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, that's well, specifically the charge within that resulted in the creation of this committee was to expand on public engagement and finding innovative ways to incorporate public knowledge because it's of critical importance during the next phase of the work of the grant. And the level of the public interest in this topic has reached a tipping point where the capacity of town staff and elected officials to meaningfully engage with all interested parties and community members will be exceeded in the next phase of the project. These were premises that were established when the grant was applied for, and this committee was formed as an outgrowth of that. So we first met in September of 2022. We've met almost every month since, and our schedules included our monthly committee meetings, but also almost every month, if not every month, we've had a second event that's generally been a speaker series where we've had folks come in to speak about specific topics. And I won't steal Ellen's thunder on that. I think she's going to talk about that. But I do want to observe that we've ended up tackling the big issues that relate to the resiliency of the river. And that's included all the hot topics that everybody in town is talking about, chiefly dam maintenance, cost removal versus repair, flood and water levels, fish passage and habitat in the river, historical and cultural considerations. It's really been our plan to address all these topics and listen, compile, and be able to report back to you folks. And then I'll just finish by noting who the we are that we've been talking about.
Do you want me to move you through these?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not a PowerPoint person, sorry.
I think my last one was in college, so I don't think either of us are.
But the moving features.
There we go. So that kind of was your last little discussion there, was some of the.
And to the art, I'll credit that you all have contracted with FB Environmental, and their staff has really been the backbone of the work that we've been doing, including designing PowerPoint for old people like me. But in any case, the 9 members are Ellen and myself. We have, and I should note that we draw from basically every corner of the populace of Camden. We have folks who are ostensibly representatives of the 2 committees that are formed in the community that are interested specifically in Montgomery Dam, the Save the Dam Falls Committee, and the Restore Maguntacook Not Committee. But so we have actually, and Ray Anderson is here. He's also one of our members. Courtney Cease, Deb Chapman, Elfie Owen, Ellen Reynolds, Seth Taylor, Susan Todd, and Tyler Smith. And I will observe that among all, there's much more important information on the website, but I would direct anyone who's interested to check out our website, which is maguntacookrivercac.com, and read up on our bios, but really get to the more critical information, which is the data that we've collected so far. So I'll stop talking now.
All right. So what you're looking at right now on this slide is the result of a gap analysis that we did at the beginning of our formation as a committee. Essentially what we did was we brainstormed the essential areas that we felt were missing information. We gathered all the information that was already available regarding the Maguntacook River watershed, and then identified areas that felt like they were sparse. So areas that we can look for more information, fill in, really feel like we get the most answers to fill those so that we can move forward with the most amount of knowledge to make a recommended, educated recommendation to the town. So essentially, looking at that gap analysis, the idea is to bridge the gap. And so to bridge the gap, we took a multifaceted approach to knowledge gathering in addition to our monthly meetings. So that has looked like a lot of different things. Rick touched on that a little bit, but one of the things that we did was we have hosted 10 educational speaker series that has included topics covering the history of the river, traditional Wabanaki land and water use, sea-run fish, flooding and storms, tours of both the lake and the dams, water quality and monitoring. And later this week, tomorrow actually, we'll be hosting a roundtable event with representatives from the community, from other communities who have addressed similar issues. So it'll be a really great time to see how other towns have dealt with this and ask the questions that we're having a hard time grappling with ourselves. We have conducted interviews. Laura from FB Environmental conducted over 60 interviews with community members representing a vast array of differing opinions, ideas, and backstories to help us understand the pulse of the community. We offered a town-wide survey. This was to determine what methods of communication and outreach work best for the community to understand the questions that feel like they've still been left unanswered and gain insight into the various aspects of the river that matter most to our citizens. We have created a beautiful website, which Rick also touched on a little bit. This is something I can't really undersell to you guys. It is an incredible website, incredibly comprehensive. It has all of the information on our meetings and our speaker series, as well as the ability to watch those. But it also has story maps for the watershed, for flooding events, for sea run, that you can go through and really look at every piece along the way. They're interactive. They're very, very compelling. I absolutely recommend that you go to those and take a look at those. It also houses the results of the survey that we sent out and an extensive categorized list of the frequently asked questions that we receive and our answers to the best of our knowledge. We send out a newsletter that goes to about 300 citizens, hopefully growing. And that typically recaps our activities, highlights the topics that are being discussed in our speaker series, and announces upcoming events. And that's a really great go-to if you feel like I can't get into the website right now, but I can just look at this couple-page newsletter. It tells you what's been happening in the last month. And then, of course, we do our meetings every month. There have been 17 so far, which brings us to where we are now. I'm sorry, I went ahead. That's where we're going. Yeah, I let it out. But so where we are now is that none of us are experts, but we do feel like we have a pretty good understanding of the 7 categories that we had identified as gaps. We've really been doing a lot of work to fill those gaps. We do understand that we have a lot of work to do to understand how the community feels about a variety of different river management options. And we additionally acknowledge the need to better understand the legal, tax, and flooding implications to river abutters that may be affected by a change in a river footprint. So where are we going? Audra alluded to this a little bit also. We've done a lot of this sort of back work to build up to the next step. And so we are moving into some more proactive steps here in the next couple of months as we make a plan going forward to ultimate vote in November. So what you see on there is meetings with committees and boards. That is just to have everybody in the conversation that needs to be. If we are overlapping in our work, it's certainly important to include all of the members of those different committees and boards. We are planning neighborhood dam walks this spring and this summer. We'll be hosting tours of the private dams for the community and interested parties. These conversations will allow the MRCAC to best understand the community values regarding the river restoration. We will be holding a river festival in June. That's a time to get out, interact with the river, understand the work that we've been doing, and then ask questions and really just stimulate engagement and excitement about the river so that can carry us into the fall as we make a proposal. Pursuance of grants. We're looking forward to several grant opportunities which will be opening in the spring. Obviously, we don't take all of these blindly and just say we're going after whatever grant is available. But it is our intention to ensure that we are planning ahead so that the community can be positioned to take advantage of these funding sources should they become applicable. Basically, just planning to take those steps if we need to. We'll continue to evaluate grants as they fit in with the status of the project and determine whether or not to recommend pursuance of these grants by the town. And then finally, the last step, really what we're all here for, is recommendation and vote. Ultimately, the MRCAC was founded to make an educated recommendation to the town of Camden Select Board. So while we're looking at the McGonagall River management through a watershed-wide lens, the Montgomery Dam offers a unique case. It's design options for the Montgomery Dam solely that the community will be voting on in November. So prior to the vote, we will be working with the town and the select board to help draft the warrant articles to the vote and to compile the necessary outreach materials. Though our recommendation will encompass the entire river, we will be providing the select board with Montgomery Dam specific recommendations before the community vote. And now we are open to questions.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That was excellent presentation. Thank you for updating us.
Before we open it to,
Please.
if I can say something, because I've been working with that group for over a year now, and these are people who attend every meeting. When I tried to cancel a meeting before Christmas, they said, no, we need to meet in December. So it's really rare to find a group of really dedicated people. These are also people who spend enormous amounts of time outside of our meetings to prep, to read, to inquire, to question. They all come with their own questions. And I think the motto that they chose, no stones left unturned, is really a testament to their dedication to looking into every question, every issue, as Richard said, hard ones, and to lean into hard conversations with an open mind and an inquiring mind. So I personally thank you all so very much, all 9 of you, for your dedication, your hard work. I think I'm so lucky to be part of this committee with you. So thank you.
Just a ringing endorsement and a great presentation. What I'd like to do is do 5 to 10 minutes for the select board, then 5 to 10 minutes for anybody from the public who would like to speak, and then bring it back to the board. We do have a few other things on tonight's agenda. So board, do you have any questions or comments for Rick or Ellen?
My only question would be your survey. What was your result from that survey? How many people approximately? Hundreds, thousands?
If you already have it already, go
I don't
ahead.
have the exact
Otherwise,
number. We
filibustering
did
off
have less than we were hoping engagement. We have all the results of that on the website where you can kind of see how it's broken down. Some of them went specifically to high school, middle school group and got their thoughts. I don't know the exact number of
I will, in
respondents.
just one second. We had 329 total respondents, 57% of which were 55 or older, 80% of which received the survey from our email list, press releases or our website. 72% received information from news articles. And the results themselves, I don't know if I can pithily summarize them.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just was wondering how many actually responded.
And I believe that the 329, we actually had a second wave of survey results that came in with the cooperation of the high school. We sought some input from our student stakeholders, knowing, they know more about science than any of us do. So, and here we go. I promise you there are results here. But we didn't, because we approached the students late in the game, we didn't get as robust of a response from them as we wanted, but we just felt it was important at that point, not even just limit it to Camden children. For one thing, it would have been impossible at the high school. But secondarily, we recognize to some degree, stakeholders in the river expand beyond the town limits. But in any case, how's that for a non-answer and answer?
So 329
Right.
Camden residents responded, And of that, 80% were over 55.
50-something%, I
Right.
think I said.
Oh, 50 something? Okay.
I have a question about the grants. So we're looking at an April and a June, if this calendar that I'm seeing in the select board packet is correct. Sometime this spring, we're going to be looking to apply for grants that are related to this project. Have we identified what those grants are more geared to? I've heard from some of my colleagues and others that maybe the grants are only available if fish passage is part of it. Do we know where the grant sources are or what the purpose of the grants may be yet?
Audra would certainly be the expert on that, but I would say that our understanding is that the level of grant available is commensurate with the holistic view that you're taking on river management. So if you're looking specifically at fish passage, that doesn't necessarily have as much funding as if you're looking at fish passage and flood resilience and climate change, all of those things more holistically. The federal government stance is to be basically removing relic dams and reverting rivers back to their natural path as much as possible. So that doesn't mean that there aren't any available if you're just going to go for fish passage or any of the steps in between, but the funds change based on what option you go with.
Thank you. And funding sources, do you know what those might be?
So it would be the National Coastal Resiliency Fund. So that's through NOAA, but administered through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So currently, the grant that the committee's talking about that we're working off from, we're in a pipeline, what's called a pipeline program. So we're a little bit less, it's less competitive for the town of Camden than it is for other applicants. We're more of a shoe-in, I guess is the way that you'd say it, because we started out at the beginning with a feasibility study. We've moved on to the next phase, which is more of the design phase, which is what we're in now and what we're working through now. And then the next phase would be more of, construction or final design. So it would be that fund that we would, be looking at in the spring.
Are we also highly qualified for those additional grants because of the reasons you already outlined?
Yeah, so there was another round of funding. It didn't go through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, but I believe it was also administered through NOAA that we also would be highly competitive for.
Okay.
And same.
That's the April one.
Right. That's the April funding round.
Board, any other questions before we open it to the public? Allison?
Great job. Thanks for, I've not watched every meeting, but enjoyed a lot of the speakers. I am wondering if you've talked at all about Lincolnville or a little bit of hope and how we might be able to work on the conversation with them. I think it was you, Rick, that said, that all of this extends beyond Camden. And I think that that's a really important part of it because, all the water that floods Camden mostly comes from Lincolnville, and fish that might like to be in Lincolnville get stuck in Camden. And I'm just wondering if the committee has any plans to reach out to Lincolnville or if that's been a topic of conversation. I love the idea of going around to the different committees and boards here, but.
We have not done a lot of outreach with those communities yet. I think that's a great idea to see where they play into it. We've been more focused on the dams that are in Camden specifically, but I think that would be a great thing to take a look at.
And just the only thing I'll add is that we've had good engagement with the McGuntacook Watershed Association. Yeah. Tim, the director, has been a great partner so far. It took us out and we had a pontoon party, drove around the lake, and he showed us some key parts and what I forget what the term was, but there are these devices that gauge the
water level monitoring and the water quality,
dissolved oxygen,
right.
And all this. Again, I'm not the scientist.
That's a good point about Lincolnville. Yeah, a lot of the involvement does go through them.
But long term, for sure, I think it's the anticipated lifespan of this committee is one is designed to get us through November. Mm-hmm. I think long term there may be a role for a committee, especially when you're talking about engaging with other communities that share the watershed. It's a great idea. It's just not within the plan right now.
Thank you. Anybody from the public that would like to speak or ask questions on this topic? Ken, please.
Good evening. My name is Ken Gross, and I am speaking as a private citizen. I'm sort of reworking what I thought I would talk about based on your presentation tonight. I would like to point out that there was an excellent survey done about 3 years ago, and I can send you the results of that. It was done by an independent researcher named Emily Lusher. She got about 1,000 respondents, and she asked pointed questions. Are you in favor of taking down or preserving Montgomery Dam? And I think it's a much more helpful survey. I did read yours carefully. One question I had was, what percentage of that 300 odd people were students? Do you happen to know?
It's minimal.
Okay, it didn't sound that way.
Well, it's on the website, so if you want to go check the numbers, they're all
Yeah,
published.
I didn't see the numbers there. That's why. Yeah.
While you're
Thank you.
talking, I'll try to find it.
Thank you. The other point that bears repeating is that much of your talk has structured this program about getting grants. And that is somewhat offensive because it seems that Camden should decide what's best for Camden and then seek grants to do that, rather than structure the project around attracting money. It sounds like we are chasing grants when we should be chasing what's best for Camden. So perhaps I have some misconceptions, but I had assumed that a citizens advisory committee would be formed when there was a need to assess a contentious and complex issue in an even-handed and methodical way. In this case, I had expected the McGunnicook River Citizens Advisory Committee to ask the basic question: will Camden be better off or worse off after rebuilding the McGunnicook River? I had expected a comparison of costs versus benefits, of loss versus gain. After all, there has not been any cost versus benefits analysis in the 5 or 6 years that McGunnicook River has been an issue. I had expected the Citizens Advisory Committee would rank or evaluate these concerns, including, of course, environmental concerns, dollar costs, economic gains and losses, aesthetic and cultural values, possibly disruptions caused by construction, and design concept. I did expect to see some kind of ranking of pros and cons, and I haven't seen it. I hope that you're moving towards that, and perhaps you are. So I have been disappointed and discouraged that the McGunnicook River Citizens Advisory Committee has skipped over this assessment phase, that is the cost versus benefits. And you have dived right into advocacy without ever documenting or reporting to the select board or to the town any analysis of the pros and cons. As I said, perhaps I have some misconceptions, but is this what the select board intended? Is this what you thought you were getting for your $1.6 million? Not a careful analysis on a contentious issue, but you got a marketing plan designed to persuade the townspeople on a pre-designed course. Is it too late to get an assessment of loss and gain, a discussion of pros and cons, and present an open choice to the people rather than a series of promotional events? Thank you. There is much more to be said, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ken. Would anybody else from the public like to speak on this? Yes, please, Tony. Okay, sure. 2 volunteers. Tony, you're next.
Tom Zumwalt. I have 2 issues. Number one is the water quality. As far as I can see, the water quality study, going back to when all this first started, we were in a big rush to hire the consultant because they needed to do studies of the water quality. So we hired the consultant, but then it turned out that they really needed to do the test. The tests didn't really show the lowest quality of the water, except in the summertime. So they had to wait until the following summer, even though we had rushed to hire them so they could get this done. So that would have been last summer, the water quality test should have been done. As far as I can see, those results haven't come in yet. And I understand that last summer was probably not a good summer to do the water quality test, because what you're trying to get at is when the water level is low and the temperature is high, therefore the quality of the water is not going to be as good. And last summer was a weird summer where I don't think it ever got up to 90 degrees. So I understand the dilemma, but at the same time, we're talking about going forward with this huge project. We don't know if the water quality will support 500,000 herring coming up the river. And I say this based on a little bit of personal experience, because I like to distance swim. And when I first came here, I looked at the area between Seabright Dam and the East-West Dam, and I said, this is going to be a great place to swim, right? So I did it once, because at the end of that up and back, I had spots on my skin. And I can tell you from personal experience, the water quality, there are areas there where the water quality is not great. So I don't know what to do. If we have to vote on this in November, you've got one more summer. So that's just point number one, is that I would hope that somebody finds out what the water quality is before we go too far with this project. Number two, I'm in the camp that I want to, regarding Montgomery Dam, I have right from the beginning and still think we really need to look closely at ways to do both. That is, to keep a waterfall and a dam, and also have some sort of a fishway coming up there. And I've spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about this and down there looking at the way the rocks tilt and so on and so forth. And I have a lot of questions about what options are. Tony Grassi's plan is a good starting point, but as he said in his presentation, he said, I don't expect this to be the way this is going to end up. This is just a starting point. But there's been no place to discuss his plan or any other plans. And I get the impression that you're moving towards bid-ready plans right now. And yet there's been no opportunity to discuss ways that we might be able to do this. So I guess that's my question is there going to be a time when we can have specific questions about how that might be handled? It's just a comment that I hope there will be a time.
Sophie, please.
Thank you so much. So just a few things. This is an update from the committee. The committee's work is not done. This was not their final presentation. And trust me, there are lots of items on their to-do list and things to look into. Ken, the point you made earlier, you came last week to the committee meeting and you asked a similar question, and I think we answered you by saying that, yes, we will look at the economics and the cost-benefit analysis, and we thought it was a good question on your side. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we've heard you and that we're going to work on this. On the water quality, we did do this study, and I'm going to just give it over to Forrest to talk about that because he's the specialist. I'm just a laborer who helped put the data loggers into the river. But all these questions, and I cannot say that often and enough, we are welcoming your questions. We want to know what questions you want the committee to look into. What are the answers you're looking for in order for everyone who's going to be voting in Camden to make a decision and to have access to the information? The committee was primarily formed to dig up all the evidence, all the reports, to speak with experts, to ask. They all come with their own questions. They designed the agenda. They have done the gap analysis. This select board here has nothing to do with the agenda that the committee sets. They source their own questions, and their questions come from you, the public. So When you have a question, please do send it to us. And please do not assume that anything has been decided. We welcome public engagement. Every time we have reached out to the public and organized public session, we had a lot of people coming, and we're hoping to still have a lot of people coming. And your questions matter to us, to the committee, and keep on asking them, because this is how we're going to make sure we do good work. But at the same time, as Ellen said earlier, look at the website. There's a gold mine and treasure trove of information. And if you don't like to read, you can watch YouTube videos of experts who know those topics better than we do. So I really do appreciate your comment, and I thank you so much for asking those questions. And please rest assured that the committee's work is not done. This is just a midway point. And we'll take your questions into consideration. And I think it's a good point also, Forrest, that we need to give the results of those, the water quality.
Forrest, go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. First of all, thanks to Rick and Ellen, and also Sophie and Chris for their participation on the committee. I also want to just recognize Audra, who has been at every single one of our meetings from the beginning, and we didn't necessarily expect that, and it's been a wonderful addition. So I wanted to be sure that the select board is and the town is aware of that. And just quickly to reiterate what Sophie just said, I'm glad she said that we have, I promised, and by the way, I'm the owner, CEO of FB Environmental for a spell, and we promised in the beginning, I remember when I first spoke to the select board, that we would listen, that the committee would listen, and that, our company is supporting the town and the committee will listen. So we have public engagement scheduled, and there's still some listening to do. And we hope not just to hear from the people that we often hear from, but some of the people that we haven't heard from yet, that are maybe a little bit harder to reach. So that's one of the goals. And then finally, just to address Mr. Zumwalt's question and follow up with what Sophie suggested, the water quality monitoring. So we were hired initially to do that first year, and we did get the data loggers in the water at the end of the summer. And, as you mentioned, we only, got a small sample of the season, and those results are on the website. We had the very first speaker series presentation covers all that, so it's there. And then the second season, you may or may not know that the McGuntacook Watershed Association was hired to be the data collector. We had a small piece of that work in that we helped, and Sophie came out as well, install the data loggers in the river to collect the data for the 2023 season. Now, so that responsibility now lies with the Watershed Association, and I have reached out to Tim Trumbauer. He had a family emergency this winter, so there's a lot of data to go through, over 1 million data points, and those data aren't available yet, but they will be soon, and they will certainly be shared. So I just wanted to provide that update that it's in the works.
Thanks, Forrest. Audra, you want to come in onto the grant and how we're thinking through the grant process?
Can I say something
Yes,
briefly
please,
about
yeah.
the water quality?
Sure.
And some of these things were, like the water quality testing, were not a requirement of any kind of river restoration project. There has been, even before this committee, we had feasibility studies and public input sessions, and what they know about river restoration projects where connectivity is improved is that water quality always improves. So it is not a necessary thing to know ahead of time in terms of for funding opportunities. It's not important to know just how bad the water quality is. Water quality improves. And since we're not talking about introducing, it's not IFW looking at putting salmon in McGuntacook Lake and maybe whether they can survive or not. We know that river herring connectivity improves water quality, and that the water quality that we have now, it would be fine for them. So it's not an essential thing to know for moving forward, but as part of the listening sessions that we did before, that's been a topic of frequent community interest. And so we added that to the project with town funds. That portion of it isn't grant funded because it's not something that NOAA needs to know in order to be willing to invest in this project. That was a community concern, like wanting, everybody here. I agree with you, wanting to know more about the water quality and how we can improve that with things like clear cutting ordinances or whatever else might come up.
And if I could, I'm sorry, I forgot to add one very important thing about the monitoring. And that is that it's a long-term project. And as Mr. Zumwalt just mentioned, one season will not tell you everything you need to know. You need to really look at it over a decade or more. So as part of that initial project, we wrote a quality assurance project plan that's filed with the state of Maine so that the data collected from the Megunticook by whomever, as long as the proper methods are followed, will be usable data for the state of Maine and the town of Camden. So I just wanted to let you know that there was some upfront work done that hopefully will be able to monitor the water for decades. Thank you.
Okay, I just like to say first of all, I have submitted both of these questions before to the committee, and so I'm not just coming out of the blue with this. Secondly, going back to when we first hired FB Environmental, the big rush was because we needed to test the water. And now you're saying, Allison, that it doesn't matter if the water quality isn't there?
It doesn't matter for the purposes of the project because
Then why were we in such a hurry?
Because it was a community concern that's been expressed because people want to know more about the existing water quality. And as we're looking at improving the health of the entire watershed, even if it's not something that NOAA would require in order to support fish passage or dam removal projects, it's something that's important to the community as we're looking to better manage our watershed in the future. The quality of the data that the town of Camden and the Megunticook watershed in general is far inferior to the types of watershed plans that have been done in other parts of the state. And so I think as people became more aware of that, as they became interested in the watershed through some of these other discussions we had, this was identified as a gap. And overall, it seems that there's widespread support in Camden and throughout the watershed to know more about the water quality, not just the Tuesday testing that happens at our beaches for E. coli, which has really been the extent of it. Camden has never properly invested in watershed-wide testing that includes dissolved oxygen and other important parameters beyond just whether it's safe to swim at shirt tail during the summer on Tuesdays. So
If I just quickly, also because one of the things the committee wants to do is to look at data and have facts. And I'm sorry that you had spots on your body. That's only a data point. That the fact that you swam for an hour and got spots is a data point. The data we collected for the data loggers are other data points. We need to gather data and we need to make the data publicly available so people can look at it and make up their own opinion. Now, the public I cannot analyze a million data points. And I do a lot of data analysis for work. But we also will have Forrest and other people analyze this data and make those analyses public. But it's important that we do have data, that we work with data.
And the existing
with
data
information.
supports the spots on your skin. We have data for years and years saying that there is often elevated bacteria, E. coli, in the water. So that would be consistent with what you're reporting. I'm sorry to say, but.
Okay. I've gone around and looked at other rivers where they've done a similar project. So Damariscotta and that area. And all of those rivers are much larger than this river. This river looks bigger than it actually is because it has dams at critical points. So between the lake and the dam at, the next dam, it looks bigger than it would be if you remove that lower dam. So I've gone around and looked at the other rivers are 2 to 3 times bigger. And I'm just wondering if the water quality is going to be there if you have 500,000 fish going up there. And the plans, by the way, none of the plans show an option for an opening from the lake. There's a fish ladder on both of the options there. So that means less water is going to be coming down there. So again, it's a smaller river. So you need to make sure the water quality is going to be
This
there.
is all being
And
vetted, and it's all really been extensively reviewed by like the highest level of scientists at the federal level, at the state level. Every time there's been a study, it's been reviewed by multiple agencies. And but this is, if some of that isn't clear, this is all great stuff for the committee to put these questions.
I want to give Tony a chance, and
I
we're
know.
running really short on time here. So thank you,
Okay,
Tom.
that's
Tony,
fine.
if you'd like to say something, please.
Tony Grassi, 363 Belfast Road in Camden. And I will be very quick. Thanks, Tom, for the minute. My biggest concern is that the MRCAC are basically just preaching to the converted. There are 500 people that are interested in this subject, or 300 in the survey. I really worry that the committee doesn't have the budget to do the right kind of outreach to the town that needs to be done. We got 3,300 voters or whatever it is, right? And so we're talking to less than 10% that sort of get on the website and do the homework and come to meetings like this. And so to me, there's a huge need to figure out, this is not a new issue for a select board, by the way. How do you get people that don't come to the meetings to really understand the issues, so that when we get to November and there is a vote, that in fact they are as educated as they can be. And that's my worry, is that the outreach it isn't limited. There's no Facebook, social media presence. There's no, articles in the newspaper. You don't see them. And so somehow I think that the committee, and I don't know whether it's the problem with the budget for FB is not big enough. I'm not sure what the issue is, but somehow I think that's a problem that needs to be surfaced and dealt with between now and November.
I would say that
Thanks,
it
Tony.
is very well surfaced. We struggle, and every idea. We have a partnership with the library right now where we're putting bookmarks with a QR code that takes the readers to the website. We have tried to advertise. We keep Dan Dunkel and the press appraised of the speaker series. We send them a press release every time we have a speaker series. I mean,
This is true. I fully understand it. It isn't working yet.
Right. This is a topic that comes up every time we meet. How can we reach more people? And Richard said it, and Forrest said it. We are desperate to talk to people who don't talk to us that often. So if you know them, every time you have a conversation with somebody about the river, please send them to us. We would love to hear from them. We're
What's
a
the
very
right
open
way?
committee, and so I know it's our own frustration also. Trust me.
I'm fully aware of that, and I just, to the extent
And I
to which
appreciate-
it's a budgetary issue, and I don't know whether that's an issue or not, but
What's the right way to get in touch with the committee? Like, give your
website
spiel about.
Go to the website.
There's an
FAQ.
email. Like,
Our
can you just say it here? Say it right now. What's the email? Like, McGonagall River at something, or?
Give you the URL to the website.
Yeah, it's megunticookrivercac.com.
And that's a pop-up on the town website too. If you go there, it'll pop right up. So if you go to the Town of Camden website.
it does. It's frustrating because it's all there. It's all available. The website's fabulous, and the information, a lot of these questions that were asked today, it's all there. It's there in depth. the problem is, there are 300 or 400 of us that look at that stuff and nobody else does. And I don't know the
Maybe the
answer.
school district can tell us how they did it with some things. They've had to learn this lesson too.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, maybe there are.
Nobody comes to their meetings though. So.
Thanks.
Do we have
Thank
any
you.
time to answer any of those questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's just take a couple more minutes
Okay.
for this one.
First, I would absolutely agree. The outreach is something that we talk about all the time, figuring out what that looks like. We've done lots of brainstorming on writing articles for the newspaper, that's one of the ideas with the River Fest is to have something a little more public that's a little bit more fun, hopefully bring people who are not necessarily interested in a select board meeting, but are interested in playing in the water. So if you have any ideas, by all means, send them our way. We are not experts in that. Some other things that I just had in my mind as I was listening to all the different comments and questions, going back to the things that Ken said, a couple of things that he mentioned. One was the idea that we're grant chasing. I've heard that comment before from you, Ken. One thing I tried to highlight in our presentation was that absolutely we are looking at grants that are available. We are trying to position ourselves to be able to jump on those if they become necessary or the right viable option for us. That doesn't mean that we are not fully vetting those or just going for them blindly and just hoping that we can get resources any which way. It's much more involved than that. So that was one comment I wanted to sort of respond to. The other one was the concept of a comparison of cost versus benefit. Yes, that's something we need to be looking more into. We've talked a little bit about that. I believe during the presentation that your group gave to the committee, that had come up as well as a question, and the perspective was that there would be potentially some financial negative to removing a dam if that were the idea that ultimately was decided on. I believe that at that time we asked that some of those thoughts or ideas be backed up with some data on your end. I'm not sure if we've seen that. So if you do have any of that information, I would love to take a look at what you feel the negatives would be in that realm. And then the last thing from what you commented on was the idea that we have somehow shifted into an advocacy group. And I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like that couldn't possibly be further from the truth. So I just want to comment on that. Certainly, we all come from different walks of life. We all have different ideas. We're trying our hardest to really put those at the door and come in with a non-biased perspective. And I think we've done a really wonderful job of that. And to be to that point, there are committee members who I don't know what their ultimate idea is for the best choice. I know some who are a little more outspoken, but there are 9 of us, and I could not pinpoint what their answer will be for the best choice when we get to it. So the idea that we're an advocacy group, I think, is misleading. And so I just want to put that out there, that feels like a false statement. I think that is it. I'm just looking through my notes. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So thank you.
When and where
Thank
is
you,
the
Ellen.
event?
Thank
Can
you.
you say when and where the event is tomorrow?
The event is tomorrow evening at 5:30 at
It's at the Bisbee Theater.
Is that the middle school?
at the middle school, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And if you've never seen the beautiful new Bisbee Theater
Oh, wonderful.
at the middle school,
It's a great
gives
space.
you a reason to come out, another reason to come out.
Yeah, and what that is essentially it's a roundtable event where we have representatives from other communities who have already gone through this entire process and can really sort of answer some of the questions that we have that we're still, grappling with. I mean, things like taxes and how things affect each, abutting property. Those are things that we have to look at on a very individual basis. We can't just say across the board, every property owner is going to have the same experience. So these committees, these members of other communities will really be able to help us let us know how they have navigated some of that.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Forrest. Chris?
Real quick, yeah. As people probably know, I've attended probably the last half dozen of the meetings. And a meeting or so ago, I was, pleasantly, I'll say, surprised about the discourse and discussion between the members about, people who are the members of the committees don't have the answers necessarily, or not one particular answer, but it was nice to see that there was discussion about questions about the things that are not yet understood and need to be resolved. And I thought that was a good thing, that I saw that there was discussion, as there should be, collegial discussion about what's right, wrong, or what's not yet understood, as far as you mentioned, whether it's taxes or how's that going to affect with the butters. And it was nice to see that it's not a foregone conclusion as far as what the end result will be. And so, and also, I think it's around October as well, there's space in the meeting for questions at the end of 15 minutes. I know we've had some folks who've attended. I know Bob Oxton was there a while ago, and it was nice to see the discussion that was going on. And, there should be, other people should feel welcomed to join in, because you're right. If you're only hitting 10% or the survey results are very small, or it's the same group, if you're only getting 80% of your diehards, the people who are getting the 300 emails, you're only getting 80% of those, that's definitely not a good sign. You want to get as much as you can in a broad view as much as possible. So those are good things to continue to work on. And it certainly is not good if it's only a perception of this is a bubble with one way of thinking, that the group has been open and they do discuss among themselves what the different options maybe should be or what should be looked into. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. Thanks, Forrest.
Item 7B is the Camden Rockport Pathways Master Plan. Audra?
Yes. So Jeff Scott, who's the chair of the committee, is gradually making his way up to
You don't have to talk if you don't.
present their master plan.
So Jeff, I saw that as part of the packet, you gave a lot of information. We just don't have time to go through all of that. So if you could just hit the highlights.
I am just doing the highlights.
Thank you,
Trust me.
sir.
I don't want to
Appreciate that
I
very
don't
much.
want to go over 20 pages either. That doesn't sound very fun to me. But hopefully we'll get these guys to talk to each other if we're lucky.
Oh.
I know, I'm taking a chance. Anything for drama. Yeah.
Well, you're a veteran, aren't you?
Are we coming? Are you? Yeah. How about that? Pretty amazing. All right, I'm almost done. All right, I'm not going over 20 pages. I've got like 7 slides or so to go over. But before we get started, I just wanted to put out there that we have this idea, a little sneak preview of what we might be able to do at the stop and go intersection. We're thinking
approved. Come on.
It's going to solve everything.
I think it would go. All right.
Down to 7 minutes.
All right. So we're organized. What I'm going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the committee, very similar to what your presentation was. And then we'll get into the master plan. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot here, but we're also going to ask you to accept and approve the master plan. I don't know if that's appropriate, whether you can do that at this time or not, but that's the ultimate goal. So process what I'm saying, read it over, and ask me to come back, maybe with more questions. Please do that. That's the ultimate goal, because we need that in the minutes or a motion or something. That's the whole idea. 10 members. It's a unique group, 5 members from each town. It's a 2-town committee, so we get to do this at 2 different towns. This is our charter as delivered from the select board. Manage specific projects. We've been around for 22 years, 23, 24 years. Enhance bike ped transportation, develop and maintain a master plan, and work cooperatively. So this piece is part of our charter. You know, our committee was founded to do this work. Process, we've been meeting for 25 years. At least monthly, and our focus is on creating connections, connecting destinations. It's important because we're not a recreational committee. We're not out there building trails for mountain bikes. We're out there looking at the community and looking for how to connect destinations. Maintain the master plan, set priorities focused on safety, community health, walkability, and the amount of pedestrian traffic. We're not considering super rural stuff. We want to see bang for the buck. We seek grants, but not independently of the town. We help with that. And we create awareness through public meetings, online presence, the press, through partnerships. Plus, we maintain a sidewalk survey. You guys know what that is? We go out and we look at all the sidewalks and we help Dave St. Laurent with recommendations. And he looks at that when he's got nothing to do.
Always.
All right, always. Why a master plan? So this is the question you have to ask when you're doing this kind of stuff. So Camden, and along with others, has recognized the benefits of a master plan related to bikes and peds. I'm not going to read through this. It's stuff we work a lot, and we spend hours on working and parsing these words. So please look at it. It's in the executive summary of the master plan. Basically, safe, pleasant routes to destinations, to walk, to bike, and to enhance local transportation options, reducing the necessity to drive. Who and how uses? I want to emphasize this, that not only you, but all the committees and the town manager should be referring to the master plan when you are doing projects, whatever the project is. And that's what we strive for. That's what this master plan's for. It's our like, is there anything in the master plan, the Pathways master plan regarding Elm Street, regarding Route 1? Take a look at it if there's sewer or if there's a resurfacing project, because we may be able to piggyback on that and get something done. The goals are long. We have a number of goals. Create a network of functional facilities, enhance the quality of life by improving that safety, reducing motor congestion, mitigating environmental pollution, relieve parking problems, strengthen the vitality of the village center, complement traffic calming, provide students with safer routes to schools, and add to community attractions as a tourist destinations, integrate bicyclists, pedestrian facilities with any regional public transportation plans. That comes and goes, but we participate in the active transportation plan with MDOT. They came and presented to our, not the last one, but the prior meeting, which is why we couldn't meet with you folks. And it was fantastic. They have an active transportation plan and lots of good elements to it, and we can work with that. All right, now we use a few graphics, okay? This is what, if you look at those bluish, greenish lines, that is where our existing sidewalks are. That's our existing infrastructure. And this is what we work with in our community, in our committee. When I look at that, I kind of get the picture of like a spider web or a bicycle wheels. You've got these lines going out, which are the spokes, and then you have these connections in between. And when we look at this, we try to think of where the connections are and where they're needed. And that's how we come up with recommendations. And in the master plan, you'll see a list of recommendations, and we'll get to that. This is a slightly different map, and I'm going to enhance it a little bit about how we got here, just to give you a little history and to give you an idea of how long this stuff takes, which you probably know. There are also these little red lines in there. You can see in amongst the tealish, bluish, there's some red lines. Those are proposed connections, but we'll get to those. In 2000, we did our first project. That's why this committee was formed. And 2 years later, we finished the Union Street pathway. In 2010, we started working on that Seabright connection, Washington Street extension of the 105. It only took 13 years to get there. All right. The grant was written in 2010.
The sidewalk you're talking about, or the
Yeah,
Riverwalk?
the sidewalk.
Okay.
That's the sidewalk. The Riverwalk, the first section of the Riverwalk, the Tannery section, grant was written in 2011. 2 years later, it was done. That was with the Conservation Corps. They built it. The next project we started in 2012 was the bus station, you know, that sidewalk that's just done. And that was just done in 2022. But that grant was written in 2012, just to get you ideas of how, this is the work that we're doing, very long term. Which one came up? I don't even know. The Riverwalk, the next section, up by Seabright. 2013, we wrote the grant. These are pretty fast acting. These are called RTP grants, and they have to be done in 2 years. That's why they have to be set up really well. Bump outs, that was part of the downtown master plan, which was written in 2015 and was finally done in 2021. Thank you very much, town. They're beautiful. Riverwalk, next section, the Knowlton Street section, 2016, done in 2019. We had to ask for an extension on that because it got a little complicated. And then more recently, we added Shuros, which seemed like an easy thing. It's those white painted things on the road on Mechanic Street. That actually began with a walk by MDOT because you have to get approval from them based on traffic and how much traffic and visibility and all that stuff. So it doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of planning, and we're part of that. Advisory lanes were added on Norwood. That happened very quickly. It was beautiful. And then most recently, Pearl Street, that extension down to John, beautiful. And it was beautifully done because it was in conjunction with the sewer systems that were being done there. Here are the proposed ones we've got, and this is in the master plan. The one that's highest on our list is Elm Street, ADA compliance, stop and go to Rennie's. That's the highest. Next one is John Street, connecting that extension down to Route 1. Basically what you're doing is giving people a way to walk safely to the grocery store. The next item on our list is the Riverwalk, the next phase of the Riverwalks, which would be the wastewater treatment plant and the middle school. We'd like to see work done there, and Dave St. Laurent's fairly aware with that. We're working in conjunction with the river restoration folks. They're very aware of it too. So we're kind of doing that partnership there. Rawson Avenue sidewalk is on our list also. A lot of people walking there. The Camden Street sidewalk is on our list, and there are a few others that are listed out in the master plan, and you can see them there. You don't have to remember that. Townwide, we really, a sore subject for us are the barriers in sidewalks, the telephone poles, utility poles. And you've heard it from Dave. I think he was here a couple weeks ago and he mentioned it to you, but it's something that we keep pushing. Extending Bayview Street is the last one I'll point out. But again, as I mentioned, there are other ones. Oh, sorry, there's one more. Simonton, adding a shoulder for cyclists going out there is important. It's a very dangerous road for cyclists, and a lot of cyclists ride that because it gives them access to Route 90, which is a safe place to ride. All right. That's it in terms of recommendations. I'm just going to point out this other concept briefly. It's called complete streets. Dave St. Laurent is totally dialed into this. He knows. And Camden has adopted it along with about 14 other communities in Maine. We're leading the way with adopting a policy towards complete streets. Complete streets just means you're thinking of other things other than vehicles. So it includes vehicle passage, but it also includes people and bikes. How do you make it safe for everybody? That's all complete streets means. And it's something, it's sort of a lens that we try to train everybody to look through when you're looking at projects. So designing streets doesn't have to be all work. Some of you know that Anita and I were in Australia, and we came across these guys installing this crosswalk. And it was bizarre to look at, but it can be fun. Isn't that really, yeah, it blows your mind, Tom, huh? Does that look weird or what?
How does that stand up to calcium salt?
Same as
It's
the other
just
ones.
paint.
But
It's actually paint. It's a
I
applied
know.
paint. Yeah, it's cool. All right, here's my summary. Consider bikes, peds in all your planning. Refer to the master plan. Work toward complete streets. Reduce traffic speed. Increase accessibility, particular to destinations. That summarizes very quickly 20 pages. And if you do this, we'll be happier, healthier, more livable, and we'll have a more vibrant and desirable community. And we'll all be happy. That's it.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great presentation. Seriously, it was. It was very entertaining and informative. Board,
Yeah,
anything for
and
Jeff?
short.
Yes.
All right, that's what I've got. Questions?
Sophie?
I have a couple of questions. Do you get public input a lot in your meetings?
Not a lot.
Not
a
enough?
lot. Every once in a while we get phone calls. Yeah. We solicit them.
Yep.
But I would say begging is similar, and the issue that the Riverwalk, the River Restoration Committee is similar. Yeah, but sometimes the comments we get typically have to do with my front yard. That's what it has to do with. It's not a big picture. It's always about, there's a root lifting the sidewalk in front of our house, fix it.
And the other question I have is, I would love to see more bike lanes. I'm completely, 100%. But why do we have sidewalks in Camden where we cannot walk to people and have a conversation and we have to be back to back? Can we change that? Is this something you're going to be tackling? Can we make those sidewalks more walkable? Because I can walk with my dog, but I cannot walk with my husband and my dog, or with you and my dog, Jeff.
I have an embarrassing story. I run a lot, and I was running up Elm Street on the sidewalk, and it was night, and it was sleeting. Don't ask me why I was doing that, but it was sleeting. I was running into traffic, which I like to do, and I was on the sidewalk, and my eyes got blinded by the oncoming lights, and I ran into a telephone pole.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was really embarrassed. I couldn't see it. So we are totally aware of these issues, and our hearts go out to especially people with strollers or mobility scooters or anything like that, because they don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to walk side by side, and Public Works is trying to knock them off as fast as we can afford. And you just we've got to be patient.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have to keep asking.
Thank you.
That's why you got to prioritize. This is hard. We don't have enough money to do it all at once. So that's why we try to say, right now, Elm Street, that's the one. That's the most people.
Thank you, Jeff. Elm Street does have our attention, as does John Street as well. Allison?
So I would say also a lot of the time the barrier isn't money, but political will. I mean, every one of these difficult sidewalks is difficult because it impacts multiple people, and usually there's a private property that's resistant to change right next to it. So we have to learn to be a little bit braver there too. But in terms of next steps and public input, one of the things we talked about on the Pathways committee was, now that we have the draft master plan, making that available somewhere so that we can solicit additional input. I don't expect like a huge onslaught, but to have sort of the select board's blessing to post the master plan as it is and allow the Pathways Committee to collect comments on that, give people a chance to be more involved.
Audra, can we text, we use the text message service we have in town? The draft Pathways Master Plan is up for comments. You have 10 days to do it. Just,
ooh,
you do that?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Sure.
I prefer more than 10 days, but
I think we can give.
I support.
We are a
public
slow-moving
public comment
group.
on,
Right, public
draft
comment
master
period
plan.
open. Yeah. Sorry, whatever days.
It actually may be prudent to do a public information meeting too, just sometime and just schedule something. Not as part of the select board meeting, but as a separate, say like we're meeting, I don't know, in a conference room and everybody's welcome to come down and discuss it. You have 10 days.
Great idea. Chris?
If there's time. I don't quite see in your plan, you mentioned this would make it safer, and I did see where you mentioned some bike accidents between 2008 and 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any data on pedestrian accidents in town, in any particular areas? For example, I know there is interest in Elm Street, but has there been pedestrian accidents over that way that is supportive of the plan?
Yeah,
Do you want me to?
it was the pedestrian safety,
Yeah, so there was a program that was
audit,
called
the audit.
Heads Up for Safety that the state was running, and they picked, I believe it was 23 communities with the highest incidences of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. And Camden was one of those communities. And they came and they did a public input session at the old
Right.
middle school building. I bet, was it back in 2018 or 19?
It was a while ago.
I
It
think
was,
right
I would say
right before
2018,
COVID.
because just after that, as a consequence to it, we did the walk on Mechanic Street for Sharrows.
No. This was right before COVID.
Right.
Yeah, it was right
It was like right before COVID,
Maybe it was
2020.
2019.
Like the month before COVID.
Oh, a month?
We even live streamed on Facebook. I can.
Yeah, but I guess in Camden, it's exactly what everyone would expect. Right along the Route 1 corridor from the downtown into Elm Street is where our highest incidences of vehicle and pedestrian conflicts are. However, we did find that there were some incidences that I don't think were reported to the state that we know about. So a high conflict area in the town was the crosswalk on Mechanic Street that leads to Knowlton Street. That was sort of a throughway from kids who were walking from the other side of town, crossing Elm Street. Then they'd walk down Free Street, cross Mechanic Street up to Knowlton Street. And that was a very, very dangerous crosswalk. And that led to us partnering with the state to put in a rapid flashing beacon. And so those are other elements and other projects that are part of the work that Pathways has advocated for. So we've got that rapid flashing beacon. We've talked about installing another one at the Elm Street intersection that is between Free Street and Union Street. So
I think Jamie came and talked about that.
yeah, and Jamie's also talked about another issue the schools noticed on Washington Street, where another one of those beacons would help make sure that kids getting to school would be safe.
Audra, have you prepared the ones that Jamie Stone did ask for? Have you prepared those for budget season?
Yeah, so I think actually we, oh no, that's something else. That was the traffic calming. Yeah, so we do have information or quotes that will go into the budget.
Great.
Chris, I can try to get that data from you from that audit that was done. BCM might have it too. Bicycle Coalition. They came and they were facilitating that
I
discussion.
just think it would be a good thing
Oh,
to
yeah,
have the
data
data
point.
points to
Yeah.
say why we're worried about these particular things. If nothing's ever happened, maybe it's not the highest priority in a given area.
Allison?
So that's a talking point that comes up sometimes. And one of the things the state has very weak data on, and I would like to get a better answer as to why that is, whether it's a reporting responsibility that we're not following through with. But a lot of the time, what happens is that unless there's a death, it's not being reported. And so we haven't had, or it's not being captured within the system. And so anecdotally, you can find a lot of things that maybe ended up in our newspapers even, or stories that parents will tell about their child being hit lightly or not so lightly. And that's not ending up in any database somewhere. And I'm not sure why that is. But with the middle school forums for safety, that was probably some of the most heavily advertised events that happened. MDOT did it, and they sent stuff out to every single Camden resident. It really was pretty well attended. And people there were able, yeah, Stephanie was there, pretty well attended for, all comparatively. And people were able to rank what their priorities were, from the people that came there. And Elm Street was one that just came up.
Yeah, they were
again and again.
They were asked to designate hotspots.
Yeah, and then we had those machines where you get to anonymously vote, not machines, but handheld devices. And so that's where the Elm Street stuff came up as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff. We will get the, go ahead, Stephanie. Stephanie has one last question.
Does the select board always vote on accepting the master plan? Or is that something that you're just asking to do?
It's what happened with the prior version.
Okay.
Yeah, the version prior to this. This is not the first one. This is a revised. It's
Okay.
an update.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it was
what
accepted.
I was just wondering.
But it's a very,
And it kind of has to do with grants. Because if you accept it, we put it in the minutes and then it says the select board has, this is the master plan accepted by the select board. So you can see this project was in there and that's why we're applying for the
Right, I
grant. It
understand
sort of
the
builds
point of it.
story.
I was just
Yeah.
wondering if it is something that has been done prior, or if this is a new process that we're trying to put into place.
And can we postpone the vote until after the public comment
Oh, sure.
period of
Sure.
more than 10 days?
Been going on for a while.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We'll own that. My understanding is Pathways is going to own that, the committee for putting together that public information.
Okay.
And give us the link. We can also put,
I like this idea of the text.
Yeah, the text we can do. Also, I realized that much more people than I thought actually read the minutes of the meeting. So we can also put a link to a live document if you want, or a PDF that people can read, or there's many things we can try to do in the minutes so that people can access it. We can also put it on the front of the website saying public comment. I mean, there's a few things.
The draft that you're looking at that's now in the packet is the draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, please, come forward.
It's just a short question. My name is Robert Nichols, and I'm a Camden resident. And while you were talking about sidewalks and putting sidewalks in and then hitting power poles, it dawned on me, why don't, as sidewalks are being put in, we bury the power lines?
That's a huge conversation.
And that's a huge conversation.
But
And that has a lot of value because during a storm, we don't have as many power poles to run into or lines to fall down. That's my quick comment.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert. Great comment. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
And we'll get the proposed master plan up on the website. Anita, do you have something?
Just real quick suggestion, Anita Barcia Scott, whether that solicitation for feedback on the master plan could be put on the homepage. You have a lot of other things that pop up in the homepage. Some of it's been there for a long time. Just maybe you could sub this out or something for this period.
Thank you, Anita.
Yeah, let's talk about how we're gonna, before we post it, let's think about what we tell people to, how they should give their comments and things like that so that it's meaningful, so. But we can talk about that, I think, offline.
Okay, good. We're in agreement that we want to make sure that the word gets out and get people public input. Item 7C is maintenance of private roads, specifically Woodland Ave, Canaan Lane. Audra, could you give us an intro?
Absolutely. So there's a memo in your packet, but I'll go over sort of the high points on this. So there are two private roads that's come to our attention that the town is currently providing basic maintenance on, and we have been doing so for quite a while. So I thought I would sort of go over, some of the background information I found out about this and some of the, issues that have come to light as part of this. So I guess, from the onset, this is something that Camden's town attorney and MMA's legal services have written voluminous amounts of material on. They've written legal notes in 2018, 16, 2009, 2004, and 2003. And those are only the most recent ones, sort of outlining the issues with towns maintaining private roads. So first and foremost, it violates the state's constitution's public purpose clause, which authorizes the state to impose taxes and by extension municipalities. And
Roger, just a moment. Ladies, Anita, Nina, if you would like to have that discussion outside, you're welcome to, but not in here, please. I'm sorry, Audra, go ahead.
Sure. So the state and by extension municipalities can impose taxes, one of which is the property tax, but only for public purposes. So only if those tax funds are used for the broader public benefit. And the court reasoned that there is no public purpose in maintaining a private road because even if it isn't posted or gated, public access could be restricted at any time because it is, after all, private. So this is something that not only is in the state constitution, there's a lot of case law backing this up as well. Also, you need to look at other risks to the legal risks to the town in doing this. Plowing private roads, because it's not an authorized public activity, it really would not protect the town and our employees under the Tort Claim Act, which really limits the town's liability, and also would not protect the town under our insurance policy because it's not an asset that we own. So those are some of the high level issues. Some of the other questions that have come up to MMA that they've provided guidance to towns on, our attorney has as well, is there's sort of a myth that if the town has been doing this sort of maintenance for a long period of time, then it's grandfathered and the town should continue doing it. However, that's not correct. You can't grandfather something that is a constitutional violation. So if it's something that is illegal, it's still illegal and you shouldn't be spending money on it. And also, I think another issue that comes up as well is the town required to maintain these roads to provide access for emergency vehicles? And that's also something that we're not required to do on a public road. It's just like, somebody's private driveway and it's up to them to pay the cost of maintaining that. And I think that the process around this too is something that's been misunderstood over the years. So it's not something that the select board or a vote of the town can supersede. So it's not like at a town meeting or the select board could make the decision to do this because after all, it violates the Constitution. So those are just some of the background issues. But I think aside from that, this has been something that really kind of went by the wayside for quite a while. And I think that, it was not something that was much of a burden on the town for quite a long time, many, many years. But I think that as the condition of those particular roads has degraded, it has become more of a risk to the town. So if anybody has ever gone down those roads, they're really much more like camp roads. And I think, when they were originally constructed, it was probably only considered to be something that would be used seasonally. And, I'm sure that, again, in the past, there were many fewer homes there as well. So the roads were used less. They weren't used as much on a year-round basis. And I think with an increase in development on those roads, an increase of traffic, particularly year-round traffic, they've just continued to degrade over the years. And there hasn't been a lot of, major maintenance to bring them up to a standard. So it's becoming more and more difficult for the town to maintain them without doing damage to our equipment. And also the freeze-thaw cycle, particularly over the last few winters, has been quite different. So, I grew up on dirt roads. All my family still lives on dirt roads, public dirt roads. But I think anybody who's lived on a dirt road is familiar that in the past, they would freeze at the beginning of the winter. You might have a little bit of a January thaw, but it was pretty much, frozen, and you could travel over them and they could be plowed. And, it wasn't much of a problem until April when you got the thaw during mud season. Then you had 2 weeks where they're like impossible to get through. Now we're kind of having like more of a year-round mud season where it'll thaw out. And so it's just become very difficult to plow them. And it's put even more pressure on our plow equipment. And also, it's become really expensive to maintain roads across town. That's true for everyone. So we've had a lot of other residents who live on private roads who've called up inquiring about the town providing maintenance on their private road as well. So I just wanted to give that as some background information on, why this is something that we can't continue to do. We can continue to do it for the remainder of this winter. It's going to have to be on sort of a limited basis, which it always has been. So that's, if we have a storm and we're seeing a lot of thawing, like during the last storm when by the time the storm was over, it was quite warm that day. I think it was close to being in the 40s. So it was very soft. And for the sake of making sure that we didn't damage plow equipment and we didn't do much more damage to the roads, we waited until temperatures dropped and it was colder and the ground was more frozen before we went up there. So those are the kind of things that we're going to need to do for the rest of the season. But we'll send correspondence to residents letting them know that this will be the final season.
Thank you, Audra. Board, any questions or comments?
So it's not, I saw some writing back and forth on this. So it's not the case then that town officials said, nope, we're not doing it anymore this year. It was only because of the thaw of that particular time.
That day, yeah.
It seemed like, am I right in thinking that it seemed like people were thinking, oh, this is not going to happen anymore as far as this plowing of this particular road? And because I was too wondering, if a select board makes a decision of some time, is that something that should be carried forward or brought back to us for a change? In other words, the town manager just can't make a change to a prior select board opinion without, I guess, asking the current one.
Well, I mean, like I said,
I know this is like it's unconstitutional, I guess, to plow in this particular case, but I believe it was a prior select board that said, yes, let's go ahead and plow.
Well, I guess like I put in my memo, they never really had the authority to do that. So we're just proposing we follow the law.
Allison?
I mean, to me, it seemed like there are any number of things that happen in town on a regular basis, and new employees come, and a lot of the training is just you do what's been done, and it doesn't, kind of like with some of those revocable licenses that prior select boards have agreed to, where different properties have things in the right of way. It would be nice if there were a mechanism that those decisions from past select boards would automatically come back up to us for review, but sometimes it just takes a really long time before everybody remembers. There are probably more things like this out there that the town is doing, or agreements we have with private property owners, and we've been trying to get a handle on those things. Unfortunately, it sometimes seems to take somebody complaining and wanting to talk about it more, and it triggers a more thorough review. I had no idea that this was happening. I've always believed that those were private roads, and I've always avoided the temptation even just to drive down out of curiosity. So I think, this is what makes sense. Lots of people have private roads. The only thing I didn't hear you say is that there is a process for bringing roads up to, the town gets to vote on whether or not a road becomes a public road. So there is a pathway for that to be evaluated and voted on. Do you want maybe?
Yeah,
to go
so
over
that's another thing I'll write in the letter to the residents on those roads. So there's a process, and it's a statutory process that the town can go through to make those public roads. So the first step in that process is that the residents who live on those private roads now would bring them up to a standard that meets our road standards policy. And that's something that we can provide them with guidance on, how they could go about doing that. So once they're brought up to that standard, they can then petition the select board to put it forward to voters to bring it onto a ballot for voters to make the decision as to whether or not they want to accept them as public roads. And then they would become public roads, and we would maintain them like we do any other public road.
Stephanie?
I just have 2 points to ask about is, so one, these are the last 2 private roads that the town maintains.
As far as I know, so I did see, and I remember you asked me about this before. There were 2 in addition to these, Gross Road and Stetson Road.
Mhm.
And I believe that the residents who lived on those roads made the decision themselves to take over the maintenance of them. Or
Stetson is a public, we need to stop forgetting that Stetson is a public paper road that we've renewed so that's the reverse problem there. That's people making it feel like it's private. We don't maintain that one, but it's a paper road, and we added it to the list of paper roads that we've renewed our ability to eventually take over. They did stop plowing it, though.
actually, I can tell you, I have.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
That's an Ave, you mean, or
That's an Ave, yeah. Yep.
basically over by the boat landing?
so while you look for that, my only other question about it is, I've been asked by a multitude of people, would the emergency vehicles be able to use that private road, such as when they went out to, just a few weeks ago? Would they still be able to use it should they need to get down there to do a rescue or anything out on the, is it the
Means a
lake
private
or the
road?
river or
on the
something?
lake.
Because they were,
Would they be allowed to, or would it be passable?
would they just be able to just go down there and use that road, even though it's a private road? I've had just many people ask me, because they had to use it when the dogs went through.
I think it would be similar to like going down someone's driveway if there's an emergency.
Okay.
Or any other private road.
Yeah.
Would anybody from the public like to speak on this? Yes, please.
My name is Stephanie Farnham, and I am a Woodland Road resident. And all I wanted to say was I heard that we had the plowing service for the rest of the winter after a couple of unfortunate calls last week when we were told we had no more immediately. And that caused a lot of stress for a few people. And then everybody on the road was notified. And I don't know how many people reached out to you, because several people are gone right now because it's winter. But having it plowed for the rest of the winter is very important, because you can't just abruptly in January tell somebody that they're not going to have their road plowed anymore when at, let's see, over 67 years it's been plowed and maintained by the town. So that's a little.
Stephanie, do you understand that the town has agreed to plow it for the rest of this season, though?
That's what I was told, but I was just listening to Audra saying that if it was too warm, we might not get plowed.
Well, I think that would be true if it was a private plow truck as well. I mean, damaged equipment or getting stuck, that happens.
We've always been plowed.
Okay,
And it's been a little muddy sometimes, but
okay.
they've always done it.
I mean, I think the town has addressed this problem.
I'm just concerned because of what I heard just now. And of course, we need to have ambulances if required, come down the road. We need to have fire. We need all those services. We don't have time, and half the people aren't right there to get together and do this. This isn't something that one person can hire the whole road to be plowed and pay for that.
We understand you.
I live on the inside, not the water side.
Sure.
Okay.
Um,
So I don't have enough money to tell somebody to plow the whole road.
Okay, I think that if there is a storm of consequence and that, the town's going to plow you out for the rest of this year, I know that our fire department and our ambulance services will get down there. I mean, these are very, very dedicated people to what they
And if
do.
they need a plow, the town would go before them.
I would suppose if it was in that instance, yeah, they will do what it takes to get in there and save people and save property.
That's what I wanted to make sure of because
I
my parents are 80 and 84.
I have no doubt in my mind that our emergency services would get in there as quickly as they possibly could.
I just think it was done a little bit cruelly the other day when all of a sudden, no more. And I'm like, that's a little abrupt.
That's very
I
abrupt.
think you should have told us in May to get ready for this winter.
I agree. And I think that at this point, we have a good plan moving forward.
Oh, I'm sure you do. And I'm sure that we will try to get our plan going now that we have appropriate notice. But
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
so I appreciate everybody that decided to change their mind and do that.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public on this? Board, anything else? Thank you, Audra. Item 7D tonight is the MSAD 28 petition for zoning code amendment. See, we have some representatives from our school department. Maria, you want to come up and give us an intro to what you're proposing?
Can I move this off? So I'm Maria Libby, the superintendent of schools, and we have 3 board members with us tonight. Actually, 4 board members, Marcus Maroka, Patrick McCafferty, Becky Flanagan, and Rick Thackeray. In addition, we have the architect who's working with us, Joe Russillo, who's here. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information about this particular project and what we're asking for. I understand what we're asking for is a process. But basically, the school department had an innovative idea to simultaneously address 2 looming issues. And this is kind of looking ahead. One was the best future use of the Elm Street School. And the other was how to help new staff find housing in our community. And a eureka moment came when these 2 ideas basically merged with a thought to convert the Elm Street School into housing. Currently, only about 6% of school districts nationwide provide housing or some kind of housing supplement, but interest is growing because across the country, it's much more difficult for people to obtain housing when they're moving. A lot of that is happening in California right now. That's where I think most of those efforts are. But there are also efforts underway in Colorado for the same thing. We're definitely ahead of the curve in Maine, but I'm sure others who have an opportunity will take advantage of it because accessibility is a problem for a lot of people who are trying to hire. We understand the importance of the Elm Street School as an iconic building in our town with a rich history. And from the inception of this idea, the intention has been to maintain the footprint of the building and the exterior look. In fact, we look at this project as a great way to actually preserve that school as an iconic building in town. I anticipated that there'd probably be some legal questions surrounding this idea. So early on, I had sought legal advice on what I thought would be likely issues, and I'll share 2 of those with you tonight. One of them is whether the building would have to revert to the town if the district wasn't using it as a school building. The answer to that question is no, that doesn't revert to the town if we didn't use it for a school building specifically. There's a section 4103 in Title 20A that states that school buildings shall remain under the control of the school board
and that the school board may lease it for a time of up to 4 years or offer it to the town, or under certain circumstances, sell the building or demolish the building and retain the site if the legislative body, which is the voters, approves the demolition. There's no requirement for us to actually ever give it back to the town. Some town attorneys historically in Maine included a reverter provision in deeds when they transferred properties to school districts, that if the property ceased to be used for school purposes, it would cause ownership to go back to the town. That's not part of our deeds. Our attorneys looked at the 1938 deed that took that when it went from the Grange to the town of Camden, and also the 1968 deed from the town of Camden to the MSAD school district. And that reverter provision is not in our deed. That's one kind of legal question that I know a lot of people have questions about. A second legal question would be whether the housing is a valid use of school property. That answer is yes. Our attorneys have found, and they looked at case law and other things, that helping secure teachers to operate a school is a valid use of school property. So early on, we had kind of covered both of those things of if we were going to use it for housing, could we? And would it first have to go back to the town, or would we be allowed to do that? So we've kind of approached this whole thing having answered those two questions, although I recognize that there are a lot of people who might not have known the answers to those questions. So I did want to just put that out there so people knew that. So our plan is to convert that building to housing. We have, in any given year, we are hiring 25 to 28 teachers or administrators, most of whom are moving to our area to work here. A lot of other positions that we hire in our school, people aren't moving. Like, we don't have a custodian who'll move from Massachusetts to come work as a custodian, for instance. So a lot of our support staff we find locally. And that actually can just literally in our advertising, we advertise locally for a lot of our positions. In our teaching and administrative positions, while we advertise locally, we're drawing from a much wider pool, and people tend to move here for the job. That's become increasingly difficult for people to find housing. So our intention is to maximize the number of units that we could get into the Elm Street School building. We would plan to do a mixture of studio apartments, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. As it stands, we can already put housing on the 2nd and 3rd floors of that building, and we could fit between 4 and 6 apartments on those 2 floors. Currently, the 3rd floor is not finished space, so we would finish part of that space for housing. If we were able to do housing on the 1st floor, which is the reason why we're looking for an ordinance change, we could do a total of 8 to 10 housing units. And that would make a difference for us because, we have 25, some years we've had over 30 people that we're hiring. So we have a lot more people we're hiring than we would even have the space for. And we would look at it as transitional housing for like up to 2 years for people to come, get a lay of the land, make connections, and be able to figure something out. But it would enable people to accept a job with us and have time to try to find housing. I had reached out to Jeremy last summer about this effort, knowing that we would like to try to put some housing on the 1st floor. And that effort for us was folded into a larger effort that the town had already underway to try to change some of the zoning that had gone through the planning board last fall and then didn't go further. I reached out again after he had made his amendment updates to the board. I didn't know the timing, and I'd reached out to him, and he had said he had already sent those amendments that he was planning on putting forth to you. So I recognize that we're a little after that. But I've been working closely with him in the past week on the process to try to get an item on the June referendum out to vote for a potential ordinance change. I said Joe is here tonight, so we already have an architect on board, and we would hope to go out to bid on this project sometime next year.
So a critical question for us is whether we would be allowed to use the entire building for housing, or whether we would need to just restrict it to what we can already do, which is the second and third floors. So what we would be looking at is to do an ordinance change that would be an amendment that would lift the restriction of residential use on a street floor level in multifamily dwellings within the Chestnut Street Historic District, other than those that front Bayview Street. So this would add the exemption to multifamily homes that already exist for congregate housing, for the exemption in the Chestnut Street Historic District, but excluding Bayview Street properties. And this, again, is coming from Jeremy and working closely on him of how we could do a more limited approach to the ordinance change than the town had originally proposed last fall. We had considered trying to incorporate an employee daycare at one point into this project. The school board has since decided to try to maximize the number of housing units. Daycare space is much more flexible should we pursue that option in the future. For instance, we could put a daycare into a vacant classroom space, but we could never put housing into a vacant classroom space. So the Elm Street School is the one opportunity that we have for housing, and would like to maximize that because there's more flexibility with other needs that we have. We don't want housing to be the barrier that prevents us from hiring teachers and administrators in our district. And we recognize that we live in an incredibly expensive community and it's difficult for people to find housing. We live in a really difficult rental market as well, and it's difficult for people to find even rental spaces. The Elm Street School is in a prime location. It's on the edge of that B1 zone. So it's a little bit in a transitional zone. It's next to all kinds of residential properties. Yet obviously it's still really close to the downtown, making it walkable. There's ample public parking that's a short walk from that site. The mill has a lot of parking. The school district is right up the street. It has parking. And there's also parking on site at that, on the property as well. I can't remember, and I don't know if Joe knows, but my guess is it's 10 parking spaces that are probably already there. Our plan would be to keep the grounds open to the public. We recognize that there is a very popular playground on that property. We would plan to probably enhance the playground, but keep a playground there for the community that could be used actually all day long by the community. And we would envision some enhanced outdoor spaces in the other part of the property that's not the playground. That would actually just be more attractive outdoor spaces for both the residents of the apartment units and just for townspeople. We feel it would be a great step that the town could take to support workforce housing, to support teachers and our ability to hire teachers, keep our school districts strong, and to be a model of innovation. We feel it's good for the community, it's good for the school district, it's good for the town. I have met with the Mid-Coast Housing Trust, who's interested in partnering with us in some way in this project. I've also met with a private foundation who's interested in supporting housing units. They're very interested in this project. We've also connected with Educate Maine, which is another interested party. Basically, everybody that I've met with, that I've talked about this project with, is very interested and supportive. In some ways, I feel like we're in an enviable position because we already own the property and the building and face a lot fewer barriers than a normal developer might, who's trying to create a project that is housing and has to go buy property and pass a bunch of other hurdles potentially. I think it's part of the interest why people want to partner with us, because they see it as a viable option that one way or another will have some housing in it. Really, the question for us is how many units can we put into the building? And that really depends on whether or not we can put housing on the first floor of the building. So
That is why I'm here, to see if the select board would support this idea for us to be able to get it onto the June referendum.
First question for you, Maria, is has your attorney talked to the town attorney? Is our attorney in agreement that this property does not revert back to the town? Or has any of those conversations taken place?
No.
No.
Okay, because this is news to me up until now, and maybe I was mistaken, but I was under the impression, and I thought there was some controversy when the Montessori school moved in there about the use of that building and what the agreement was between the town and the school district. So the information you've presented to us tonight, at least to me, is new. I'd like to have the town attorney at least weigh in on that at some point.
Okay.
To make sure that it's-
Maria and I can have them connect.
Yeah, we can have,
Sure.
they've connected on plenty of other things, so
Sure.
that wouldn't be an issue.
And I think Jeremy has.
Well, I have one other, and I know that there's members of the school board here tonight, but you're interested in becoming a landlord. That's part of,
No, I'm not. In the school's not. We're interested in providing housing, but our plan would be to have the rent that we would get from that project cover the costs for somebody else to manage that. We would not become I mean, we would own land and a building that people were renting, but we would not be managing that.
okay,
We would hire somebody else to do that.
okay. And the authority the management would be under a certain contract, and that would be something that you and your staff would monitor?
Yeah, just like we do the hundreds of other contracts we have with service providers.
Okay.
And we have a lot of contracts
Sure.
in the school district that we manage.
Any like this where you're hiring an organization that handles, I guess, residential rentals? This would be new, it would be somewhat new territory, right?
Yeah, I like to think of it as an innovative thing that we're doing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it would be different from other things that we've done.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Maria? Allison?
I mean, overall, I love the idea of trying to actually do something. We talk so much about creating affordable housing, and it's a priority on every plan we've ever created. But when it comes down to the town actually doing it anywhere, it doesn't happen because everybody always has a problem with the location. I am really supportive, like without even needing to talk about it more, of the second and third floor. I think that overall, the encroachment of too much residential into our downtown has been really negative for Camden in terms of the condos and the noise complaints that generates. And it's sort of a planning and development no that every webinar you ever go to about community planning will say you want to try to avoid first floor residential in the downtown. However, I think that there are definitely some different things about this project that could alleviate those concerns. I was really opposed to the previous zoning amendments that came forward because it would have allowed, it didn't distinguish between the type of residential development on the first floor. And I think I see personally a really big difference between rental housing and condos. So when you allow people to buy things and then invest in them and they see that as an asset that they're going to be able to resell, it takes on a different tone. And usually people just complain about the noise nonstop. They move downtown and then they complain about the noise. And then slowly it kind of whittles away at what you can do downtown. I think there are opportunities with this project to not have those issues because it's going to be rental housing, and it would be like there's an opportunity for the school district to say, hey, if you want to have access to one of these apartments, you need to understand it's not like moving to the middle of nowhere where you can have an expectation of quiet. I think there's a lot that could be managed, even with the neighbors are going to complain about parking. The people that live in that area are going to say, we're afraid that more people are going to park on their street. People complain incessantly about the Catholic Church that's been there for longer than most people. So, and then that becomes, it's just a challenge to manage all of that. But I think if we were to do something like in partnership with the school, that it could be a way to solve more problems. Was a little concerned by the tone at the beginning where I think there's an argument that this serves like school purposes, that's okay. The idea that like, we didn't find anything in our deed that forces us to give it back to you was just like, maybe you might be right, but like unnecessary a little bit, because I think we could make this really positive if we work together more. There's a huge need for, municipal employees. We're having all of those same problems that you guys are having, recruiting people to work in this community and be able to live here too. I think it's a lot more likely to generate like widespread support from the community if there is a way to do it, maybe, in conjunction with some of those like, public safety needs that we have and things like that. So overall, I could definitely get to supporting a change like this. I'm a little worried about trying to do it quickly, and I haven't, this agenda item didn't even reference Elm Street. And so in terms of just the public being able to have a say, I happen to know that it might be about the Elm Street School, because I had overheard it in a planning board meeting that I was there for another reason. But I think that overall, if we were, no matter what, you're going to need some kind of community support, and I think that would be possible to generate, but that it might take away some of the support if we try to push it through in June. So I guess understanding a little bit more about what the necessity of it being on the June ballot versus the November ballot. And then for Jeremy, what I don't support is anything that impacts any of the other like properties. I understand the resistance to spot zoning and all of this stuff, but I'd much rather see something that is a standalone impact for this property by adding something like, for properties owned by municipalities or school districts, things like that. And I know you're like, oh gosh, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. But what happens, by doing this, we know that the school district's not going to be able to sell this just to a private investor that's going to turn it into condos that are, going to further gentrify the neighborhood. But I haven't had time to figure out whether every other property impacted by this, whether that's true or not. We don't have a mechanism for mandating that it be rental housing rather than condos. The only vehicle we have for that is because it's the school district. So I'd like the language to be specific to that.
Sure. You want to comment for me on that?
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's doable, Allison. I mean, you've got to really watch out for the spot zoning piece, but I think some sort of language, municipally owned, school district owned, something, I think we can do that fairly easily. We had tweaked it a little bit, looked at it. Shenley and I looked at it after chatting with Maria on what some possibilities would be. And then I chatted with Maria, like she said. I think there's a way to currently do it, and we can add that language, like you just said, some language to that effect. But it would really, right now, apply to, I think it's only 8 properties. One would be this property, so then you got 7 more. You got the town green. You've got 2 churches. And then I think you have 3 or 4 single family homes. And then we would not get it down to Bayview. So any properties fronting on Bayview wouldn't apply anyway. So there's like 8 or 9 properties that it would apply to currently without your provision that you're referring to about some municipally owned or school district owned. We could add that. So it would certainly just apply to 1.
We literally have churches in town that have been converted to condos.
No, I get that. I understand. I hear that. So we can do that. I think that's very doable. I will say from a timing perspective, I did chat with the planning board about this last week. And they heard the amendments at a public hearing, last summer. That was also rolled into the Washington Street piece that I think really you guys struggled with, and I appreciate that. So this is kind of a scaled down, much more scaled down version of that. The planning board did agree to hold a public hearing on the 29th, if it comes out of this process, if you guys are okay with something like this, and they're prepared to have a hearing on the 29th on this issue. So from a timing perspective for June, it's doable. They would have a public hearing the 29th, and then it would go to you folks for another public hearing, likely mid-March to late March, and warrant article review on your part too. So I think we have a time to do it. It's not an overly complicated one. It's really looking for your kind of blessing. And I think the reality is, and I appreciate your point on the street level. That's absolutely right. You generally don't want your street level in your downtown to go to residential. This in the Chestnut Street Historic District in the B1, we do have that provision that allows residential to be on the street level if it's in the B1 and it's Chestnut for single family and 2-family homes. So we already do allow that. The one piece that's not, like Maria indicated, is multifamily cannot use the first floor as residential. So that's really the only piece. And certainly, like I said, I think we can tweak the language to add some municipal owned, district owned language to that and not have a problem with it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sophie, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this idea. I think it's great that we make use of this building. I have a question, Maria. What's the impact on the school budget?
Well, our goal would be to try to fund as much of the renovation through private funding so that it wouldn't have much of an impact on the school budget. I think that's a lofty goal, but I've already started working on that, and there are people who are interested in supporting this. So it's hard to know. It also depends on how many apartment units we're going to create. So it's like, we've got to get some things lined up so we actually can do some cost figuring, but we'll also have the income from this for a long time. So we'll do cost analyses on it anyways. But I mean, the ideal would be to try to raise most of it through private money to do the renovation,
right,
and then use the income to maintain the building and pay somebody to manage the property.
Right. Cool. I would love to see the model when that's ready, and I'm curious about it. Thank you.
What was the school board's vote on this? Did the school board vote on this particular issue, and what was the vote? Did they all want it? Some want it?
From my read, there was unanimity among the school board in support. I'll let the chair.
And fellas, I'm sorry, but because we're public and we're on,
I'm sorry.
you're going to have to come up and speak if you'd like to answer questions. And Pat, you're welcome to come up and speak, please.
Yeah, there's been unanimous support among both boards and almost every person I've talked to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can see your work for sure is coming.
Anybody else? Allison, another question?
No,
Sophie?
If Jeremy feels that he has the time to work on this for the June ballot, the question is the community support, as Allison mentioned, but I'm guessing that the board and the school would take that on to make sure that there's public hearings, that people can voice their support, hopefully, and not concerns, and if there are concerns, that they're addressed. But I think, I would completely support this going to June, if that can help with the process. I don't know if there's an urgency between June and November. I don't know. I'll let Jeremy weigh in on that.
I will say, I just drafted the language right now to address Allison's concern. So I think the language is done.
So we can make you a part-time employee. It's that quick, huh?
It's done. I just wanted to stress, I sit in on, the state's obviously trying to address housing, affordable housing, workforce housing. McCog, Mid-Coast Council of Governments, just had a workshop or a conference, very small, if you will, yesterday, that Shenley and I sat in on for an hour or so. You had, the school district wasn't there, but Lyman Morse was there. Fisher Engineering was there. Maine Health was there, and you were talking the CEO of the hospital system was there, and everyone is talking about this very issue about housing for employees. It's a significant challenge. I wish, and Maria mentioned it. I spoke with a planner in Rockland, Rhett Lamb, today about housing. And we've done so many things to try to open it up, to try to facilitate more housing. We keep getting hit, the planning side from the state, I think, about zoning. Zoning's the problem. We keep changing it. It's not the problem. The developers aren't there. The incentives aren't there on the state level for workforce housing in these regions. And when you have an entity that has property and ready to do a project for workforce, I think it's a great thing. I'm going to reach out with Rhett Lamb, I think, to Maine State Housing and try to get them to focus some of their programs and their incentives that they have into this region. We keep seeing projects being built in Belfast and in Bangor and in Lewiston and Southern Maine, but this stretch, the mid-coast, is really a gap, and there's no funding coming to this. So I'm hoping we can try to prioritize. That's a bigger picture and a bigger issue. Get the state to try to prioritize some funding to this area, because from a zoning perspective, we're moving forward to try to facilitate more housing. And this is just one more piece of that. And I would add that because something is maybe added into a use that may be allowed, and I know in this case this is proposed, right? It doesn't always mean it's going to be that way, or that it will. It just gives someone like the school district an opportunity to do something different with that property and fill a need. And I certainly hear from people every day about this issue. So
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Allison?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no misunderstanding about the crisis here, but I also feel like this was on our agenda with zero information. There's no fault associated with that, but I do feel like I feel uncomfortable sending it forward tonight and then receiving all of the public input and then having the planning board hold a public hearing and then having it come back to us. And I'm nervous I'll have changed my mind, or that at least, there's like the Historic Resources Committee, for instance, they advise the town on town-owned historic properties. I understand that the argument here is that the town has no say and whatever. I agree with you, Tom, that just a review of the legalities of this makes sense, because I think we can get there in a way that feels a little more inclusive. Just to even have the school district say, like, we guarantee we're not going to start the project and then tear the building down, because what I've heard earlier is that you have every right to do that.
No. Demolition requires voter approval.
And so some of this probably, if you keep, like, the private fundraising doesn't all come through, that's going to ultimately, I don't know how much
That
you're
would
going to
go to voter approval as well.
Right. So I guess I just wonder, I would really need to understand the benefit of rushing it right now and not, I think it's a really cool thing that you guys are doing. And I understand you've been talking about it.
Could
on the
I
school board.
offer maybe something that would be beneficial, like that would be helpful to Maria and would also be helpful to all of you?
Sure.
There's a lot of funding for housing out there. There's a lot of different sources. There's CDBG grants. There's other incentives and grants through Maine State Housing. There's certain things that we have access to that the school district doesn't, because we're a community and a lot of that money is funneled through communities. So maybe if we have a little bit more time to work with Maria to help find some of those sources of funding, that would be something helpful to you that could move your project forward. And maybe that gives you kind of the time and the space that you need to think about this a little bit more, and also kind of develop an idea for what this project would look like a little bit more. So
Yeah, we had more information on the snowcat, which wasn't really the snowcat of what we're looking to do for the Snow Bowl than we had for 3 words of this on the agenda.
Right. Can I just say something?
Sure.
Maybe?
And then Sophie, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sorry. And I think I appreciate that, Chris. The process for zoning amendments is a property owner can ask to request a zoning amendment, and that, in essence, that's what they were doing. And that normally goes through my office, and then it goes to the planning board and has the public hearing on this, and then it gets to you folks. I think once we became aware of this, once Maria reached out and asked about this, I chatted with Audra about it, and then I think the idea was that we should probably just bring this to the select board because it wasn't included in ordinance updates that were, proposed amendments that were going to voters in June. And that was really, Chris, why it happened this way. The zoning amendment is a very simple one sentence thing. And it was really about Maria explaining what her project is and the intent and why and what have you, and all that behind it. This very similar thing went to planning board hearing. No, there was no public comment about it at the time. And I'm not saying that now that the school has actually come out that it's theirs, and that's what they want to do. I think I brought it up at the meeting with the planning board that the school district was looking to do a project here. So there is a little bit of communication out there with the public that this has kind of been in the works, or it's been out there.
But I would say, Jeremy, it hasn't even come to the town attorney. If it hasn't come to the town attorney for any type of agreement on the use of the property or the deed restrictions on the property, then it really hasn't been presented to the town office or been vetted by the town office in any regard.
Yeah, I would rather see it as like a joint thing a little bit, but.
Sophie, did you have something?
I think we're confusing process with objectives here. And I think the issue is having a clear process that we all understand with the next steps. The purpose is to change a zoning amendment. And I'm pretty sure that also having secured a change in zoning amendment will help you raise funds and garner other partnerships, because you're not going to go to other partners saying, help us, rebuild those apartments, things like that, if there's no zoning amendment that allows you to do it. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg story. But I think we need to really have a timeline for the steps that needs to be taken into account. I agree with Tom that, I thank you for doing your legal work with your attorney. But I think both our attorneys need to talk and at least get some resolution on that, and then have a timeline on what needs to happen and whether we can make it happen for June or for November. But we're confusing process and objectives here. So Jeremy, you really need to help us clarify those two things. So I think the board is supportive of this idea.
I appreciate that.
I think the issue is why are we talking about it today, given that there's so many steps that still need to be taken? So we need help.
I think the one step that really came out of today for me is that Bill Kelly, I need to sit down with Bill Kelly tomorrow, and it's going to be in the office, and chat with him about this and let him do a little work on this tomorrow. We have until, in order to get something to voters in June, the planning board would have to have their hearing on the 29th. And in order to do that, I would have to actually have the final language, which is very easy. It's done. I just did it. Has to be available for viewing on the 15th, if I have my dates right. So next Thursday is when the language would have to be right, and then that would be a notice in the paper that there will be a public hearing, on the 29th on it.
What is the pressure here to get this on the June ballot? Yeah. One thing that we've noticed in this town when we've tried any zoning amendment that's been rushed through has either been extremely controversial or very regretted. Every single zoning change that we've made that has been, I think, positive for this town has been one that has had a lot of legwork done by the select board. It's been much discussed at many, many meetings. It's had a lot of public input. It's never been something that we've said, or we've often regretted, something that we just said, well, we really want to get it on the June ballot for some ancillary reason. I'd like to see this one well vetted, just as we've vetted almost every successful zoning change in this town.
I think Joe could speak to the timing for us, who's the architect.
Sure. Joe, please.
Also, just on the November election is a general election, you tend to have a higher turnout. Something
Yeah.
you may want to consider if you're looking for community support. Sorry.
No worries. So working backwards, we are looking to take occupation of the building to begin construction in the summer of 2026. And so that seems like it is pretty far out, but there are several benchmarks that have to happen in order for us to hit that. Some on the process side for us and some on the process side for the town. For example, if we are looking to secure public funds and that has to go to a vote, we're aiming for that to happen in June of 2025. So and before that can happen, we need to, if the vote were to happen for the ordinance change, say in November, that would, and it's successful. We can't really design the building until we know what we're designing. Are we designing apartments on the first floor or is it something else? So we can't really get into the design process until we know what we're doing. So if that doesn't happen until November, that gives us from November till say April to design the building, document it, price it, value engineer it, price it again, and give a number for how much this is going to cost. And that is a very aggressive, challenging timeline for us for that to happen. So if the ordinance change happens in June and we have an idea of how we're going forward with the design of the building, that gives us sufficient time to be able to make that process happen and then have that a number of how much the building is going to cost, weigh that against how much private funding has been collected and what might have to be asked of the public. So that from our perspective is the reason for us trying to make this ordinance change happen sooner rather than later.
I understand, Joe, that it's a long process. I mean, why is the deadline and why June of 2026? Why not September of 2026, or?
It could be September. I mean, I think the idea is that we want to try to get in as soon as possible, with also the idea that if teachers are being brought to the area, they're going to start in the fall of 2027, their employment. And so given a year plus for the construction, if we start in September of 2026 or further into the fall, that just puts more pressure on us to complete the construction process by the time we need teachers to move in for the fall of that next school year.
I understand. I still don't think we should rush through a zoning change. I am supportive of various aspects of this project. My initial impression is, but the way that we do zoning in this town and this form of government that we use in this town is slow. And it's almost by design. And as long as we have this form of government, I think that we should at least go through this process. Obviously, I'm just one member of the board, but I'd like to see this well vetted, starting with the school district attorney and the town attorney coming together. And then if we do have the opportunity to put it on the June ballot with a proper amount of vetting, I'm skeptical about that, but I'm supportive of that. I'm certainly supportive of bringing it before the planning board at some point under some form. I think that's a great process to use to get public input and the proper process. Go ahead, Allison, please.
What are you ballparking the budget for this?
We have not even begun that process yet. So if I were to give you a number, it wouldn't be a thoughtful number. So we're still in the process of working through the construction manager who's working with us and our team to figure what that number is. And again, we don't have anything designed. So
But it's going to be many millions of dollars.
yes.
I mean, it costs $5 million to renovate MET from a school to a school, essentially. So, so I guess the part of, when you think about the capacity of a community our size for major fundraising, and we look at all of the needs, sometimes there's like a zero-sum gain a little bit, that if we need to be raising money for the lodge at the Snow Bowl, we need to be raising money for all kinds of different things. And so I worry about like the school taking on a big private fundraising project, which there's no way that can completely succeed with just private donations, maybe investors. but ultimately that's going to probably come to some, I think it probably makes sense in the long run with the revenue that you're going to bring in. That does make sense. But I think that like at the town level, we have, by trying to rush it and do it completely on your own, like what Audra said, there are resources that the town has available in terms of, I mean, that's Audra and Jeremy's profession, is to, seek funding for this type of thing. And it feels like by trying to be really fast right at the beginning, we might be missing like larger opportunities that would eliminate some of the need for private fundraising or just having the school completely go at this alone. I guess I would just feel better about it if it could be a little bit more vetted and worked on together by people. You guys, your profession is, or I'm not really you, Joe. You have a more diverse skill set. Maybe you do personally have a lot of knowledge about the funding mechanisms for this, but like what I heard from the school district before with some of the MET stuff was like, we're in the business of education. We, any of these other building related things is a distraction from our like ultimate goal of education. And I think we have this shared goal of workforce housing that I guess I would just like to see a little bit more collaboration on the front end, that maybe would ultimately make it a lot more viable for you guys in the long run funding wise. So.
Yes, please.
I'm the chair of the Five Towns CSD School Board, and just wanted to address the funding piece. I think we have a unique project here. This is a statewide national crisis in every community that I go to as part of my day job with the DOE. We hear this at the top of the list of teachers not being able to afford housing somewhere. So, even the people that we've briefly talked about this with have been, jumping. When can we talk? Who can we talk to? Like, how can we make this happen? So, I think that there will be a real interest to make this happen, to put this on the map so that it can be a sustainable option for other communities, and it will put Camden on the map as leading the way on this. And so, I think that we can easily have our fundraising covered. Of course, there might still be a taxpayer portion, but I wouldn't equate this with any other school project that we have had in the past, just because of the nature of the crisis and the interest that there is in solving this.
Thank you. I think we do share your interest in creating workforce houses, and teachers are certainly, as worthy a community asset as any that we have. I just think that, the general consensus of this board is that we do have a process to go through, and it probably shouldn't be rushed.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the school district isn't rushing. We've been working on this project for a year, and we have 3 years before it would actually go into fruition. So for us, it's like a 4-year process, which feels like ample time. For us, I can see why the select board might feel like it's being rushed because it hadn't been on a prior agenda. I don't know if a normal process of being an applicant who applies for an amendment to an ordinance that would go through the planning board, if that normal process that were followed, if that could get on a June agenda, if that still feels rushed for some reason. And Jeremy would probably be able to answer that question. Like, is it rushing it to put in an application and go through the process? Or does the process usually take more than, 5 months or whatever we've got until the agenda, to the referendum?
Well, marijuana was the most recent example, so you might not want to use that as a.
Yeah, I think the most recent example of where someone requested a zoning amendment for a specific property or for specific use on a property would be Chip Late. Other than the marijuana thing, Chip Late proposed an amendment to the zoning district and the CR to allow expansions of commercial buildings that are existent. So that was the last one, and that went through, I mean, that was really from the time he submitted the planning board, you know, there was a workshop on it, and then there was a public hearing, and then it went to the select board in and about the time that we're talking about now. I mean, the planning board did have it was a non-agenda item for them last Thursday, but we did discuss it. And again, they had a hearing on something very similar, which was a little larger. But talking to them, I broke it out into pieces, the Chestnut Street Historic District and the Washington Street piece that you guys didn't really like. So I'm certain that they're going to move forward quickly, likely at that public hearing in support of this, with a recommendation that you guys have a hearing and send it to voters would be my guess. But I don't see the timing from a very different than what Chip Lake did, to be honest with you. If it was an applicant that wanted to do, proposed amendment. The thing that we're just stuck on is that we have to have, the planning board has to have recommendations to you folks by March 6th. That's the date that the town clerk has set in order to get things to warrant. You guys meet, I don't remember, March 4th, and I think the planning board meeting is or March 7th. You guys meet a couple days before them. So we can't do a hearing on March 7th because you technically need that information on March 6th, before March 6th. So the only time was to do a public hearing on the 29th. So on that date, there's going to be 3 hearings, public hearings, is the plan. Again, generally an applicant has the right to have a process go forward. If they want it to go forward, we brought it to you, or Audra wanted it on the agenda. I think after just maybe discussing, with maybe a couple of you, as kind of a courtesy and to kind of dig into these questions, Tom, that have come up tonight. So I think it's very valid. Now that it's out there in public, I expect that more people will have an interest and will be tuning in moving forward. There will be, again, 2 hearings on this specific issue, once before the planning board, once before you, and then they'll have the hearing on the warrant language too. So in essence, there'll be 3 before it goes to the ultimate hearing, I think, which is the voters. So I think I'd leave it up to you. I mean, we have time to do it, but I would leave it up to you folks to kind of give me that direction. I don't want to spend time doing it, which isn't a lot, or doing the hearing if it then gets to you guys in, mid-March or early April, and you guys say, yeah, we don't want to send this to voters right now. Let's do this for June. We could do that. We could go through the hearing process and you guys say, we'll hold a hearing, but we want to have more communication with the public on this issue and not need a public hearing with the planning board in the summer to get to next November. But it's really up to you folks because you're the ultimate deciders on what ends up at the ballot and not the planning board. So from timing, we could do it. It's really what you guys want to do. I hate to put it back on your lap, but.
Sure, no, that's why we're here, to make these decisions. Allison?
I mean, we can still decide later that we're not comfortable putting it on the ballot. I think it's ridiculous to compare this to Chip Late's property request. I mean, this has been a school since 1869 or something. It's one of the oldest buildings that's owned by the community. It is a change. I personally am excited about it. I like the innovative thinking. I can get to the, I think it can be a very good thing, but this is right in the middle of our town, and it's always been a school. And there are many people that always believed it was going to come back to the town at some point, just like RES went back to Rockport. And I don't think that needs to be the outcome, but I don't think it's unreasonable I don't want to be told that this tonight was our opportunity to express or not express concerns, because I even just heard you, Jeremy, say, I don't want to do all this with the planning board and then come back to you guys and have you squash it. So this wasn't enough preparation for me to be able to give my endorsement for June with a promise not to have any objections when it comes back to us. And I guess that's what I'm reacting to a little bit. And I don't want that to color the overall support that I feel for this, but I know that I'm going to have to answer 5 million questions about this.
Okay.
And so.
Thank you, Allison. Your point's made. I know Pat wants to talk one more time, and we welcome it.
I thought our meetings were long. New respect to you guys. I definitely picked the right board to run for. So I don't want to belabor this. It sounds like you guys have as favorable of an opinion of this as most people do. And there has been, I don't know if you were saying earlier or asking earlier, if there's been any public opinion. There was a whole committee for this. Our facilities committee dealt with this for months and had, numerous members of the public from it who were, again, beyond unanimous support. It was actually enthusiastic support. So there was just one other thing I wanted to say about our motivation to be timely. We don't want to rush you or rush the process. I appreciate what you said, that it's designed to be slow and thoughtful. We don't want to create any unnecessary haste, but we don't want to create any unnecessary delay either. If it's a simple zoning issue, which again, I don't deal with this, but if it's a simple zoning issue, we have motivations to be timely. Everything that Joe discussed, the more timely we are, this is actually something that makes us more competitive as a district. The more competitive we can be, the more money we save, and the higher quality of education we can provide. And we're consistently, constantly, almost negotiating staff contracts. So again, another motivation to be timely. And there's also a number of interested parties in terms of funding and construction. We don't want to lose that momentum. But again, I even forgot to introduce myself again. My name is Patrick McCafferty. I'm chair of the SAD 28 board, which owns the building. And we don't want to rush you guys. We don't want to create any unnecessary haste, but we do have motivations to be timely. If it can be on the June budget, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. I'll respond to you. I think the board is generally supportive of the project. I don't know to what scale, whether it's first floor, second, third, or second floor and above. But one thing that I do know that this board is reticent to do is move quickly on zoning changes. And so I think that that's primarily where I see it from. And I think I hear some of my colleagues looking at it from that perspective as well.
I mean, the unintended consequence, what you were going to bring us was going to change the zoning for all the churches. So it was going to pave the way for multiple churches to be so that's where my, a lot of it my concerns go away if we just have it be that one property. But we have done things in the past that we've regretted. So because we didn't fully understand.
Anybody else have any feelings or comments on this? Thank you, Maria. Thanks for coming forward. Thank you, everybody from the school board that came forward. Appreciate.
I mean, are we saying that they can go ahead with the planning? We don't have,
Right.
This is a discussion item. It's not
right. So we don't control the planning board agenda. Right.
Right.
So the planning board can do what they want, and Jeremy can do what he wants with bringing things to the planning board. And
So this will come back to you again.
Yep.
Right.
right. So that the process can continue, and maybe everybody's concerns will be allayed by the time it comes back to us.
But
Right.
but wait, I think we urgently need to have the meeting between Bill Kelly and their attorney and to settle as
Yeah,
fast
we'll
as
start that
possible.
tomorrow.
That has to happen because that can stop the process altogether.
That can move forward very quickly.
Exactly. Let's do that first and report back to us. Keep us posted, please.
Thank you. Last agenda item tonight is adjournment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? 5-0. Good night, everybody.